Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Ayo me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
mama me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
isa me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
ay mama me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
brother me fele sama,
Me fele sama. 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 Me fele sama.
mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama, mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama, mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama, mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Ayo me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
mama me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
isa me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
mama me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
me fele sama.
Me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama, mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama. Ayo.
Mina bakabusi nenge, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nenge, me fele sama.
Ayo me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
mama me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
isa me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
mama me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
mama me fele sama,
Me fele sama.
isa me fele sama.
Me fele sama.
Yesho na yehi mama, yesho na yehi mama,
Yeso na ye mama.
yesho na yehi mama, yesho na yehi mama.
1, 2. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me now. Yeah, all right, cool. Just making sure. And yeah, I'm not even on the mic that I want to be on, so I'm gonna try and, you know, facilitate that right about now. So let's do stay tuned. But yes, 10 Wadi, be thankful unto the mother, father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai, Modzimo Mokoro, give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African liberation and African power for all African people on the face of Mother Earth. Thank you once again for joining me for this session. And yeah, man, we're going to get into some things today. It's going to be an interesting one. For those who were not here for part 1, I'm reviewing a conversation that I had the pleasure of taking part in on the Brother Garfield podcast. Yeah. And the reason why I'm reviewing this is because some very interesting points came out of it in relation to Pan-Africanism, Pan-African theory and practice. And it just seems that in this day and age, you know, a lot of opinions and viewpoints regarding the Pan-African movement, its ideas, its ideologies, yeah, its definitions. Notice I'm using a lot of plural terminologies here, kings and queens, yeah, require some correction. Yeah, and the sad part about that is that this exists even within what is referred to as the so-called conscious community, people that are learned and studied and in fact should know a thing or two about these things, but a lot of misconceptions abound anyway. And so I thought it was a good case study. If you want to check out part 1 of this particular conversation on my channel, you can check the description to this video below, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, and you can also find the link to the Brother Garfield conversation that we will be reviewing. For those who may not be aware, the introduction music that you just heard, yeah, is you know, something that I've been vibing on recently, some beautiful music, yeah. And in fact, you know what, if for anybody who heard the introduction music, yeah, take a guess at where the music is from. Just type it in the chat, yeah. Take a guess, yeah, at where the music, when we just play a while ago, come from, yeah. If you heard the music that was playing on your entrance, just give me a signal in the chat and type where you think that music comes from. I'll be interested to know, you know what I'm saying, where you think the music I come from. In fact, let me give you a little bit more of it, just for those who are here now, yeah. Like, just let me know where you think this music comes from. We got Nigerian. Someone said Brazil. Someone said London. Any more? If I put you out your misery. Any more if I put you out your misery. So we got Nigeria, we got London, we got Brazil, and we got Congo. All right. So in actual fact, yeah, that is a song by a group called Isasi. Yeah. We got Cuba now. Yeah. All of you are incorrect. It's a group called Isasi. Yeah. And the group is from Suriname. Yeah, Suriname, the nation in South America. All right. And I was listening to their album yesterday, and I'm listening to the lyrics, and I'm getting a vibe from these lyrics. I'm waiting on a full translation. But you know, like when you listen to something, yeah, you don't understand everything, but you get a vibe from it, right? I'm just feeling the energy. I'm picking up certain words, right? And so what I caught from it was this terminology, bakabuzi negre, yeah. And I'm saying, nah, that means something. I can feel the vibration in that terminology, and it means something. What I've learned is that the term bakabuzi negre, yeah, if we were speaking in Jamaican patois, yeah, we would say bakabush, yeah. So bakabushi is bakabush in Jamaican patois, yeah. And Nengre, we would say bakabush, black man, yeah, or Negro. Literally speaking, it's a song celebrating the Maroons, yeah, the so-called Maroons, yeah, of Suriname. All right, that's what the song is celebrating, yeah. And there's more to it because I'm vibing on the lyrics. I'm hearing certain things which I won't go into now, but I'm searching for a brother or a sister from Suriname who can translate the language for me, because I know they're speaking in a very what you might call deep patois of Suriname, yeah. And so we give thanks, yeah, for that energy and that vibration today. All right, so I thought that was a perfect way to start off the show. Especially because we are talking about, and it's something that I've been vibing and my spirit's been resonating with since yesterday. I've listened to it countless times, so we give thanks to that energy right there. So brother Seku was with me, so I'm assuming that he will return at some point, so do stay tuned for that. But I want to get straight into this conversation right here, right now. Share up the link, kings and queens. Share the link far and wide. Share the link far and wide, yeah, and do like the show on your entrance. We're going to explore this conversation, and we're not exploring the conversation for the sake of antagonism. Yeah, there are certain. I was taught growing up in the Al-Qaeda revivalist movement to find teachable moments and utilize them, right? And so the conversation provides a teachable moment, and there is some antagonism in the conversation, but we are not going to invest in the antagonism. Yeah, what we are going to do is look at the arguments that are being made and explore them a little piece further, and hopefully some brothers and sisters, you know, will draw something from it in terms of, you know, information and substance in relation to Pan-African practice, theory, and ideologies. Yeah. Okay. So if you were here for part one, I stopped just at the point at which I came into the conversation. Before I go any further, let me just introduce you to Brother Seku. I'm going to read through now, Brother Seku. Greetings, Brother Seku.
Greetings, Brother Shakara. Thank you very much for this wonderful program. I'm happy to be here to listen to your part two and also contribute my own quota.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, as always, my brother, you know what I'm saying? You can contribute as much or as little as you want to, but whatever the case, I appreciate you joining me for the conversation, especially because you were part of it. And in many ways, you were the reason for it. People were upset with your advocacy of African centeredness and Pan-Africanism. And so that's what seemed to have sparked this conversation. So we're going to get into it shortly. I'm going to play a piece of the debate, and then we're going to stop at different points. And I've got a whole lot of stuff to share as well, you know, because a whole conversation took place around the idea of sources. Yeah. Now, not everybody that was calling for sources actually gave them, but we're going to provide some today. All right. And bear in mind that when we're talking about an active movement, yeah, some of the information that you get when you're involved in a movement comes from being in the movement, yeah, comes from actually organizing within the movement. So there's not always going to be a book that references everything that happens in a movement. Yeah, that's just not the nature of things, okay? So some of the things I'm going to say is born of the fact that I'm born and raised in the Pan-African movement, yeah? And there is no substitute for that experience, all right? But we are going to delve into some, you know, scholarly text in the first place anyway, and we're going to, you know, progress the conversation through those means. There may be a few others you pop through, and so we'll see how that goes. But for now, let me just build up the chat. Big up my brother M.A. Locked in, locked on. You are there. Big up Javier. Big up Camjiverse. Yeah, big up Camjiverse. If you are not subscribed to his channel, please subscribe to Camjiverse's channel. He has a number of good and insightful videos on Pan-African and African centered thought and practice. So do check him out. Yeah. In fact, one of his videos actually relates to some of the stuff that we're talking about. A few of his videos actually relate to some of the stuff that we're talking about today in terms of connections, yeah, between African peoples. And brother Seku recently took part in a debate, yeah, with brother Raborn in relation to the connections between the Nile Valley and West Africa. For some reason, that the thought or the idea that there could be some connections between the Nile Valley and Africans in West Africa, it senses a lot of people in the so-called conscious community. And so Brother Seku did a brilliant job, you know, representing the African Centred position in that debate. But Brother Kamjiverse has a couple videos on that subject as well. Yeah, so do check him out as well. Bringing up Jacob, MA again, Mars, and Kushni Cosmetics with the big eyes. You don't know. Welcome, sis. Love, love, love. All right, once again, share out the video far and wide. Make them know that Shakara speaks. They're live right here now. Yeah, and we're gonna go into some deep, Pan-African situations. Oh, by the way, the name of the show, Outcasts of the Pan-African community, and it's basically highlighting the idea that in the last few years, as far as I've seen it, it seems to me that there are many people within what is referred to as the conscious community, in particular the online conscious community, who have become very hostile to Pan-African and African-centered thought, theory, and practice. And so it seems that some would want to make the Pan-African ideologies basically surplus to requirement, and negate their impact and their efficacy within the conscious community. And so we're challenging that at the moment. And I'm honored right about now, Kings and Queens, to be joined by the one and only brother Jabari Osazi. And he says, I'm really able to listen to in live to your important convos. I'm even more pleased that I happen to listen in while brother Seku is sitting with you. I agree with my brother, you know what I'm saying? I think I'm good looking and I'm articulate and rather insightful. But I'm even more good looking and articulate and insightful when I got a man like brother Seku sitting next to me, you know what I'm saying? And once again, one or two more brothers and sisters may come through later on in the conversation, but I'm honored that you are listening in, brother Jabari. And
peace and blessing to Jabari, our great scholar there.
Yes, sir. And just man. In fact, I may send you the link, brother Jabari. Yes, so stay tuned to your social media. You're not obligated to, but if you would like to come through, the platform will be open to you shortly. All right. But it's an honor either way, whether you choose to come live or not, for you to be joining us. And thank you for taking the time to leave a message. I've been referred to as a Jabariite, brother Jabari. I'm not sure if you're aware of this fact. But I've been referred to recently as a Jabariite, so you know. So once again, it's an honor to have you with us. All right. So we're challenging the extent to which the African-centered conscious community is negating, seeking to rid itself of Pan-African principles, in particular revolutionary Pan-African principles. All right. And so I'm going to start, sorry for not having this lined up, strictly speaking. I'm going to start it where I ended off last week. All right. And let's see how we get through this. The end of the video that I did a couple weeks ago addresses a lot of the points here. So I'm not going to go over all of them. I just want you to understand what is happening in the conversation. And I would also encourage you, to take notes on the information, and take note of the spirit in the conversation also. This is very important, Take note of the spirit in the conversation and how the conversation is being conducted. All right? Okay, let's take in the vibes.
Sign in our neighborhood. Let's build a street. Let's build some nice housing, affordable house. I bet you could do that, Seku, but you're not going to unify Africa. Know what I'm thinking? Really, I'm thinking you scared. I'm thinking you really running from something, Seku, because you can go back and make a difference in your community, bro. I really think you can. You got some education abroad. I'm thinking you can take that back and fix your community, yo. Stop running, Seku. Go back, man. The motherland needs you, bro. Your community needs you, bro. Am I wrong, Seku? Am I wrong, though, Seku?
I'm gonna give you the host back. That shit.
You made some good points, but you didn't answer my question, and you start telling me how I should go back. But what I asked you though, you didn't answer that.
I did answer. Hold on, guys. Everybody, stop. One mic. It's sharing right now, bro.
Nah, it'll only let me share links, photos, drop by. You saw what I sent you in the back. I don't know what's up with that shit, bro. It won't let me share screen. It say what I sent you, photo. I don't know how that's set up, but I can't. It won't let me do it. So if I put a link in here, it'll let me share the link. I mean, I don't know, bro. I don't know. I guess you wait till Saturday to deal. I don't like that. I'm not gonna trade.
All right, cool.
I can add on to this part.
All right.
I'm gonna give you the hose back. But
Right.
I can add on to this part. So what Unc is saying is correct. There never was a unified Pan-Africanism in Africa. One, you gotta understand what that word means and what does it even mean. What is the definition of Pan-Africanism? It is specifically tailored to this generation dealing with the diaspora, saying that all of the people should unite based upon our shared history and to fight against oppression, racism, and that the only way we're going to make it is if we come together based off of those said principles. When we look at the origin of how we even get here, here you have this on the screen. An evil West African king and the Atlantic slave trade. The classic comic stating that Africans stole Africans during the Atlantic slave trade is very common on forums, on classroom discussions, who bring this argument in order to downplay the magnitude of the slave trade. They fail to understand that during the era of the Atlantic trade, Africans did not associate themselves with a continent, but rather identified themselves with various societies, states, kingdoms, and empires, bigger or smaller, where people belonged to different lineages, spoke different languages, and had various religious beliefs. Neither in the past nor in present, Africa can be defined or referred to as a sort of country, etc. Now, when you look at this king, Abondozen, the king who ruled Dahomey in the present day of the Congo between 1797 and 1818, during his period of the relations between the kingdom of Dahomey and Brazil, it was dynamic. This guy here, as you read down here, between 1715 and 1850, in the kingdom of Dahomey, he sent at least 5 diplomatic missions to Brazil and Portugal. These missions was to do what? To negotiate the slave trade, right? When we scroll down here, we want to get down to what the rule was. We want to scroll down here. Let's get down here a little bit more. Hold on. I want to get to this because I like the people to see what I'm saying. I don't like to just talk. We want to get down to what the people are saying here. In any event, once I find it, it's going to tell you that the rule was never to sell your own people. So they had this rule to don't sell people of your own tribe. So if the economics presented itself that was good for that people, they enslaved you. If it was Pan-Africanism and they're dealing with the same enemy, who is the Portuguese, who is ravaging Africa, you will not do deals with that man for financial gain. You will not try to use a lie to say they was doing it because they were under pressure and if they didn't do it, no. That man wanted to do.
All right, so just for anybody who's not quite following this at the moment, he's making an argument as to why Pan-Africanism won't work, yeah? Especially on the African continent, all right? So he's saying it was never there, and the example that he's given is this one king in Dahomey, which is present-day Benin, and Adandozan, as he's reading here, collaborated with the enslavement process, okay? And so because of this, he's basically making the argument that if there was Pan-Africanism on the African continent, this would not take place, all right? This is the argument that Brother Rabon is making at the minute, all right? So let's continue.
Do that because he wanted to get the bread. So nowhere in our political history where you see this ideology of Pan-Africanism come to Africa without the African American, because we are the ones who invented it and we are the ones who brought it there. And we are the ones who educated the people who got the first new independent African nation in Ghana. Comes from America. That was not there. And it's not there today. And I'm sorry to tell you, it will never be. It's just not going to happen. You see that right now. They're divided.
Right, so bearing in mind, when he say it's not there today, he's talking about Pan-Africanism, yeah? So apparently, Pan-Africanism is not there on the African continent. It's not there today, all right? And he's going to make some rather disparaging remarks about Africans on the continent shortly.
Divided by religion, they're divided by culture, they're divided by their politics. They can't even get together and have a conversation without throwing chairs at each other. and you're
So Africans on the continent can't get together and have a conversation without throwing chairs at each other. This is the point that Brother Rabo is making at the moment. Yeah. Okay. So this is contrast now. Well, let me play and I'll come.
speaking about something of unified what, and bringing up Egypt and all these other things that is totally 5,000 years removed from our Pacific plight and our problem. Where's this thing at, man? I want to find this thing, man. I need to find it. Hold on. I ain't look at this in a minute.
Hold on, Rabon. Let me get what I'm gonna do is because a bunch of people jumped in to speak. I'm gonna give everybody 2 minutes.
Let me get it. Let me give it back to you. Wait. There you go. Dagger Squad. Let me get it back to you.
No, I got it. I took it back. Don't worry about it. I got it.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah. I got it back.
All
So
right,
let me go to Shaka Ra, and then after that, William Ingram, and then Mr. Vega. So I'm gonna give everybody 2 minutes. I'm gonna put the clock on, and everybody get 2 minutes. Right?
After greetings, brother Garfield. After all that, getting 2 minutes is a little bit stifling still. But let me just say,
don't speak your mind, cause you're different.
No, everything blessed. What I'm saying, but yeah, I do. First of all, bigging up, brother Seku. You know, you always bring the Pan-African fire, and so we appreciate that. And just to say, in relation to what was just said, first of all, it's inaccurate to say that African Americans began Pan-Africanism. That's just historically inaccurate, although they did make a contribution.
Can you give us a source for that? Can you give us a source? Can you give us a source?
So, all right. So very quickly, yeah. If you want my response to the Adandozan stuff, watch the previous video. Yeah, I go into that a little piece in relation to the history of Adandozan and the different narratives, yeah, that revolve his tenureship as the head of the Dahomey Empire. Yeah, to cut a long story short, there are certain narratives of his history that suggest that he was actually engaged in the dismantling of the enslavement system as it related to the Dahomey Empire, and significantly reduced its impact during his reign. There are others sources that suggest that the voyages, yeah, not just under him, by the way, because you would be forgiven that for believing that the trips to Brazil, that he said 5, all took place under Adandozan. They didn't, yeah. A lot of them took place under King Gezo. And under both of them, one of the motivations for those trips was actually because members of their family, their individual families, were caught up in the enslavement process and were trafficked to Brazil. And so they actually traveled to retrieve or sent delegations to retrieve their actual family members, yeah. And so, which, you know, if you just get the idea that they went to negotiate a slave deal, you know what I'm saying, it doesn't add at least some context to the whole situation. And this is not to negate or justify any collaborators as far as African people are concerned with European enslavers, except to say that collaboration took place at every stage, yeah, of the enslavement process. There was collaboration on the continent of Africa, there was collaboration on the ships, and there was collaboration in the Americas, okay? But what is absent Brother Rabo's analysis, yes, is the fact that there were resistance and rebellion on the continent also. Yes, there was resistance and rebellion on the ships, and there was resistance and rebellion in the Americas. Okay, and so we want to add all of that context right here now. Okay, so we're at this point where we're getting into a debate about the origins of Pan-Africanism, which I wasn't intending to do. I was simply correcting an inaccurate statement that the brother made. But as you hear, the brother interrupted me like a sentence into what I was saying. I'm going to pause just in case brother Seku has anything to add at this point, and then we'll come back to the following debate.
Yes, can you hear me, brother?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I remember this part where you came in and then the whole debate, and you can see the interruption there. He talked for a very long time. You listened, but once you came in and made a point, then they started calling for sources, making noise just to distract you. So just to point that out, like the discussion is never productive. It's about attacking each other. It's not really about the information. That's the unfortunate part. So you can hear him there. He made 2 points. He said there was never a unified Africa, and African soul Africans, and Africans are divided on the continent. Therefore, Pan-Africanism is not possible. Can you hear this faulty reasoning, people? Okay, just listen to it. Forget about the yelling and stuff. Just analyze, do a logical argument here, for example. So just because 2 people been fighting, or 2 people had misunderstanding, therefore there will never be unity among them. It makes no sense. What are you talking about? Has there been any continent that have fought each other like Europe?
None.
Has there been any continent in the world that have killed each other like Europeans?
None.
Today we speak of Western civilization. Today we speak of European Union. Today we speak of the international community. Which country have killed each other? Even as we speak, a European country is killing another European, while other Europeans are unified. So when you sit down there and say Africans are divided, African soul, African, therefore Africa will never unite. So you are listening to somebody who is having an agenda or making an argument that has no basis in history, that has no logic in it, but just because they speak good English and they yell as much as possible, and you think that they are making sense. No, they are not making any sense. That's just all I wanted to say.
No, thank you, Brother Seku, you know. The argument is very strange. Like, okay, let's say that there was nothing called Pan-Africanism on the African continent in prior times, yeah? There was also a time before there was a Kemet. There was also a time before there was a Monomotapa. There was also a time before there was a Bakonga Empire. There was also a time before there was a Wagadu, yeah, a Tarseti, a Mali, a Songhai. All right. There was a time, as Brother Seku is alluded to, before there was a European Union. there was a time before there was a United States of America. Yeah, and even when the United States of America began, it wasn't 50 states, it was 13 colonies, yeah, 13 states that was unified, yeah, into what is called a union. Okay, so the idea that it hasn't existed in the past precludes the idea of existing in the future is illogical. Otherwise, nothing would have ever existed in history. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Because new events, new formations, new developments take place, especially as it regards people organization. All right. And so this logic, one is faulty, yeah, and 2 is a popular argument for negating Pan-Africanism when it's not an argument Pan-Africanists make. So Pan-Africanists have never argued that at some point in the distant past, we had a continental union or government that expanded across the entire continent. This is not an argument that I've ever heard any Pan-African movement, scholar, organization, leader, any Pan-Africanist formation of note ever make in history. It's never an argument. So why is this argument so popular as an argument for negating Pan-Africanism? And I'll tell you better than that. The people that make this argument never seem to challenge the existence of the neo-colonial nation states as they currently exist. Nigeria is just over 100 years old. Congo, as it's currently constituted, is just over 100 years old. South Africa, Kenya, Angola, Ghana, Mali, yes, Chad, Sudan. In fact, South Sudan is just about over a decade old. Yeah. So all of these formations, the majority of the borders that we see on the continent at the moment are not the result of the organic social, political, and economic development of African peoples in relation to each other. Yes, this is an institution that was imposed upon African people by colonizers. So why is it that the fact that there was not a Nigeria before 1914 doesn't negate the concept of Nigeria today in the minds of these people? Yeah, there wasn't a Ghana before a similar period of time, or should I say a Gold Coast that became a Ghana. Yeah, that never existed before the 1884 and 1885 with the Berlin Conference. So why do we not negate those structures? Why is it these people affirm the neo-colonial borders, but negate Pan-African unity? The illogicality of this is even worse, as I read last week, when you consider the fact that the illegitimacy of the borders is identified and exemplified everywhere by the fact that the borders literally cut through homogeneous people groups. Yeah? So you cut through Ashanti land, you cut through Yoruba land, you cut through the land of the Luo in East Africa. Yes? And create these illegitimate nation states that, because of the power of Western Europe, is accepted today. But when the African, in resistance to those machinations, from the very inception of those borders, resist, that becomes illegitimate. Yeah? And that resistance from that time until now is made illegitimate. So the white man come and say, cut up Africa, these are your borders. The African response is to resist the creation of those borders. At that time, we were doing that on the continent and in the diaspora. 100 or so years later, that resistance becomes irrelevant and negated. This is the logic that we're hearing at the moment. All right. Again, if you want to hear the analysis on the Dandazan, listen to last week's video. But for now, I'm going to get back into the video itself, and then we're going to come back for some analysis. All right.
First of all, bigging up, brother Seku. You know, you always bring the Pan-African fire, and so we appreciate that. And just to say, in relation to what was just said, first of all, it's inaccurate to say that African Americans began Pan-Africanism. That's just historically inaccurate, although they did make a contribution.
Can you give us a source for that? Can you give us a source? Can you give us a source for that? I'm gonna give you. Hold on, wait. You see how I started my 2 minutes? I started my 2 minutes by showing something. When you say something extraordinary, like you just said, we need the evidence. I'm going to give you a name, Paul Cuffey. Paul Cuffey is the richest black man who lived in America, who left America and put it into activation and went to where? To Europe to deal with the black loyalists who fought in the American Revolutionary War. Who did he meet with? He met with Equiano. What did they do? They wanted to find free land for black people. When you even look at the term and the name of Pan-Africanism, it comes from Henry Sylvester Williams, who makes the African Association. And then
where's Henry Sylvester Williams from, Rob?
He's from Trinidad.
Okay, so
that's
again,
the name. That's the name.
Again,
hold on, brother. Listen
how
to
you,
this.
How are you going to interrupt?
Hold on. Wait a minute, man. Hold on, bro. The action existed before the name here, which I just described to you.
All right, just a sound check, yeah. I've finally got this mic in order, so just making sure people can hear me. Can everybody hear me on this mic? Can everybody hear me on this mic? Let me know in the chat if you can hear I upon this mic, yeah. And that's it. And yeah, and just to say, all right, Brother Seku's giving me the signal. Yeah, you can hear me. Okay, just to say, yeah, the nature of this back and forth is going to become a theme, right? Yeah, in the conversation. I'm not to be disrespectful, but I do find Brother Rabon to be entirely argumentative. Yeah, as you can hear, like I'm not trying to have an argument at the moment. Yeah, it's a point, and if the brother would just allow me to finish, I'll make the point and move on. All right. And in fact, I should say that this spirit in the conversation eventually resulted in me being thrown off the panel. Yeah. And I will say, yeah, that that this was the second time in a row, yeah, that I had been thrown off the panel as when I featured on Brother Garfield's platform. Yeah. The first time he wasn't on the platform. But Brother Rob was delivering the presentation, and I made a 2-minute statement, and I was thrown off after that. And this time he was on the platform. Now I don't exactly know who threw me off. I suspect it was Brother Rob. I suspect it was Brother Rob. Either way, there didn't seem to be any aversion, yeah, coming from anybody to the fact that I was thrown off the panel. Okay, for whatever reason. But you'll hear that as we go forward. Let's point that out at the moment, and let's play some more. Should I play it or should I? Yeah, let's play some more and then I'll come back to the points I want to make. But of course, that's the point I'm making.
And it started here. It doesn't start in West Africa.
Sorry. I never said anything about it starting in West Africa. What I said was it's inaccurate to say that Black Americans exclusively began Pan-Africanism.
I never said that, brother.
That's what you said. You said it began with Black Americans.
No, brother.
So bear in mind that the brother literally said it started in America with Black people in America, yes, and people on the continent never got nothing until Black Americans went there. He didn't mention anywhere else other than America, yes? Okay, let's bear that in mind, all right? So listen to the conversation. It's inaccurate to say that Black Americans exclusively began Pan-Africanism.
I never said that, brother.
That's what you said. You said it began with Black Americans.
No, brother.
Yeah, that's what you said, Rob.
That's what you said. What I'm simply saying is
that
it's inaccurate.
Wait.
I can't finish saying what I'm saying. I don't know.
That Pan-Africanism was started by Black Americans. That's what I said.
Yeah, and I'm saying
and you said it's inaccurate.
And I'm saying to you, yeah, and I'm simply saying that's an inaccurate statement. It will be more accurate.
Give me a source to show the actions of
Pan-Africanism. It will be more accurate to say that Black Americans made a significant contribution.
No, brother,
Africans.
No, brother.
Africans,
I just gave you Paul Cuffey, 1811, bro.
Excuse me.
Where is that happening at? Show me the
Hold on, Rob on. Let him finish, and then you question him after. Don't let him finish. Let him finish.
I'm simply suggesting. I'm simply suggesting that in as much as Africans in the United, or what became known as the United States of America, contributed to the development of Pan-Africanism prior to the terminology, so did Africans in Haiti, and so did Africans in Jamaica, and so did Africans in Trinidad, and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's not really a point that should inspire massive, contention. It's simply a matter of the fact that Africans in various different parts of the world. So if we look at, for example, the fact that the Africans in Haiti, when they established a nation, made it a free state for African people across the diaspora, that is a form of Pan-Africanism. Yeah.
What you said? Wait, I can't hear you. What you said? What? Who made it? What?
So, the Africans in Haiti, yes, established it as a free Black republic. Yeah, and established it on the principle that any African who finds themselves in Haiti can live there as a free African. Yeah, and so this is a form of Pan-Africanism. All right. So that I'm just giving an example here, to say that it was a collaborative effort. Yeah. In that regard. Yeah, that was one small point.
Yeah, I'm saying, but what I want you to do.
Sorry, I want to finish saying what I'm saying.
No, come on, man. Why I can never have a conversation with you, bro? Why does gotta keep happening?
At the moment, you're not trying to have a conversation with me.
You just told me that
I was given 2 minutes to speak.
Yo, who's saying let him speak? Yo, be quiet.
I was given 2 minutes.
My screen, man.
I was given 2 minutes to speak, and I said one sentence, and you interrupted me. I'd like to complete saying what I'm saying, please, with all due respect. Yeah. Now, I think Brother Seku has already outlined the principles. Yeah. All right. So you've heard that, yeah. So the point that was being made was that it is correct to say that Africans in the United States, or what became known as the United States of America, made a significant contribution, an extremely significant contribution to the development of Pan-Africanism. Yeah, in thought, in theory, and in practice. But they were not alone in this development. Yes. Okay. That's the only point I was making. This seems to be a contentious point for Brother Raborn. And as you can see, I gave the example of Haiti, yes, and the fact that when the revolution between 1791 and 1804, first and foremost, the revolution itself was an act of Pan-Africanism. Yeah, as well all of the rebellions that took place among African peoples in the Americas, because it required us to have to amalgamate and collectivize our efforts as various different groups of African people and identify with our commonalities African people for the sake of resisting the enslavement process. Yeah. So and this is something that Africans consciously did. It wasn't an accident that Africans found ways to unify our efforts in resistance of enslavement. It was deliberately done. If you look at, for example, the rebellion in Jamaica under Chief Taki in 1760, yes, you will find an example of Africans consciously instituting the Chromanti language, yes, which drew on mostly Akan, but other African languages as a unifying language to be through which to communicate. Yeah, the Chromanti language is still spoken mostly among the so-called Maroons in Jamaica today. Okay, this was consciously done, and the aim of the rebellion was to throw off the authority of the enslaver and institute an African-centered style nation on the island of Jamaica. Yeah, not adherent to the political, economic, and social customs of one particular group, but the collective of the Africans on the island at that time. Okay, so we have to just point that out. Yeah, so but also when the rebellion became successful, the constitution of the rebellion, and you can find the works, just to give sources for this: Black Jacobins, yeah, by C.L.R. James; The Irritated Genie by Jacob Carruthers, and another book. One second, let me just that goes into the constitutional. Right, this one, yeah. Beyond the Slave Narrative: Politics, Sex, and Manuscripts in the Haitian Revolution. This book is important because it explores the ideological foundation for the revolution and the state development, the nationhood development that took place following the success of the revolution. Yeah, what were they trying to do, and what was the theory and practice that was guiding, yes, what they were trying to do. Okay, so once again, Beyond the Slave Narrative: Politics, Sex, and Manuscripts in the Haitian Revolution by Deborah Jensen. Okay, so that you can find the evidence for what I'm saying in those free texts, and I'm only saying that right now for the sake of time. Yeah, and another example you can see in the book is exemplified or given expression in the book Pan-Africanism, A History. Yeah, and so he begins. This is by brother Hakeem Addy, a brother who I grew up in the Pan-African community listening to because he lives in the UK. Okay, and the Haitian Revolution, he says, might also be considered an early form of Pan-Africanism, of African unity, alongside other acts of liberation carried out by the enslaved during this period, such as the revolt of the Malays in Brazil in 1835. One historian has presented such resistance in the Caribbean as a 200 years war, one protracted struggle launched by Africans and their Afro-West Indian progeny against slave owners. The Haitian Revolution, the Haiti Revolution, united Africans from different parts of the continent as well as those born in the Caribbean. They established their own common language of communication, religious practices, and worldviews in pursuit of liberation. And they managed to maintain a struggle and vision of freedom for over a decade. The various Maroon communities or settlements of liberated former African slaves that existed throughout the American and African continents, notice, that existed where? Throughout the American and African continents. Many of us don't know that so-called Maroon communities existed on the African continent in resistance to enslavement. All right. In the modern period can be thought of as other early forms of Pan-African unity. Of these, the most celebrated was Palmares in Brazil. Yes. An African kingdom where thousands of liberated Africans from different backgrounds found refuge for nearly a century until it was destroyed by invasion in 1694. So this nation, Palmares, is about 1/3 the size of Portugal. Yes, existed in Brazil in the context of enslavement. Yes, and throughout this, it was developed in the 1590s. Yes, and lasted, as it says here, for nearly 100 years. And this 1694 invasion was not the only one. There were various attempts at invading Palmares over that 100-year period. And up until 1694, the Africans in Palmares were successful in withstanding invasion, receiving other Africans who were runaways from plantations. And in fact, there is also evidence of them actually liberating Africans from plantations, as well. However, Palmares was not an isolated example, and South America was the location for many such African settlements, variously called quilombos, cumbes, palenques, which may also be considered early forms of Pan-Africanism. And we know this because of the fact that the example of Palmares inspired other people that became noted Pan-Africanism. Here we go. The Haitian Revolution was clearly an inspiration for many. Prince Hall, for example, and he's going to mention, Brother Rowan's going to mention Prince Hall later on, referred positively to the revolutionary events in Saint-Domingue, which is what Haiti, one of the names that Haiti was known by once colonized, and the struggles of those he referred to as our African brethren. Yes. And he goes on, Nanny Griggs, one of the leaders of the Bossa Rebellion of enslaved Africans in Barbados, and so on and so forth. So the Haiti Revolution became a focal point for many in the development of what became known as Pan-Africanism. Okay. Now, Reverend Rawborn gave the example of Paul Coffey. Paul Coffey is a legitimate example in terms of the development of what becomes known as Pan-Africanism. I'm going to give you another, however, and this one is taken from London, England, and is a contemporary of Paul Coffey, and in organized form is actually prior to Paul Coffey, or some of Paul Coffey's activities, and the development of some of what Paul Coffey was doing. Let's see. Okay, so one of the definitive aspects of the development of Pan-Africanism is the African identity. Yes. And us African people identifying ourselves as African. And so this sensibility dates back to the 1700s with people like Ignatius Sancho, who's an African living in the UK, and is said to have been born on a ship sailing to the Americas. He is transported to the UK in his early childhood, so like between the years of 2 and 4 years old, and is known for having referred to himself as an African. So he was famous for writing letters challenging the legitimacy of the enslavement and racist attitudes of white people, and he would sign off his letters, Ignatius Sancho, an African. Okay, these letters were published after his passing in 1782, and then Mama Phyllis Wheatley, who is born on the continent of Africa. So she's born on the continent, is enslaved in what becomes known as the United States of America. And she also writes poetry where she's referring to herself as an African, or African people as a race. For example, in this poem, The Happier Terence, and Terence is a famous poet from Carthage, in North Africa. Okay, so she's identifying with Terence, of North Africa, albeit under Roman rule at that time. But the point is that she's identifying with Terence because he is from the African continent. All choir inspired, his soul replenished, and his bosom fired. But yes, ye muses, while this partial grace to one alone of Afrique's sable race. So that's a reference to the African race there. And then we have the Sons of Africa, which was founded in the year 1780 in the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And two of its leading members were Otabuko Guano, who is the author of what was later referred to as Thoughts and Sentiments was referred to as thoughts and sentiments of an evil and wicked traffic of the slavery and commerce of human species in 1787. And he called, in this text, he called for the immediate abolition of slavery. The use of force should be used. It suggested that use of force should be used to end enslavement and the establishment of African schools, on the African continent. And sorry, this title here, let me just correct that now, should say Olaudah Equiano. Yeah, sorry about that, Kings and Queens. If you want to, by the way, these slides are taken from a presentation called "What's Wrong with Being African," where I'm delving into the development of the African identity. It's something that I delivered years ago on this platform, on this channel. So if you want to watch the whole presentation, "What's Wrong with Being African," go YouTube that and you'll find it. All right. Yeah, so he wrote the interesting narrative of the life of Olaudah Equiano, depicting the horrors and cruelty of enslavement. And basically what these men and women in the Sons of Africa, which was an organization in the UK, were doing, most of them were from various parts of West Africa. A lot of them were born there, and there was also a few who were enslaved in the Caribbean, living in the United Kingdom. Okay, and so they formed the Sons of Africa as an organization challenging the enslavement process. This is contemporary now of Prince Hall, who is prior to, Paul Coffey. Yeah, so we're not making this up when I say that Africans in the United States of America alone were not the developers and actioners of Pan-Africanism. It's just a fact. Yeah, and it's not a fact that should require any contention whatsoever. All right. Now, I'm going to play a bit more, and then in a little piece, we are going to get into what some of similar activity that was taking place on the African continent. All right. So stay tuned for that. But for now, Brother Seku, is there anything that you want to add to this section?
Yes. Thank you very much for that, brilliant historical breakdown. Sometimes it's important to do this because, like you said, in the middle of conversation, some people don't have their sources handy. It doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about. That's why I suggested to Sarnetta early this year when he brought his platform and said people should make suggestions as to how the conscious community should proceed with debates. I told him I will prefer symposium to these debates. Whenever there is an important topic, whether it be scientific, historical, social, economic, and anything that affects our community, and we seem to have different opinions, scholarly opinions, I think we should bring people together who are expert in the field. Let's have a symposium and make a document on that symposium. At the end of the day, let us see the facts. Then whenever we come out with a symposium, the people will be allowed. We don't have to come out with a loser or winner. The result of the symposium become a book for our new younger stars to come up and read this document, and then they don't start from where we are. They have to. They kind of like step the foundation we've laid. They can now walk on those foundations and proceed. But we cannot be having endless debate. Bring your sources, and then somebody go to Google and pull out something and bring it. Then this person go and sometimes we don't even look at these sources. For these guys, as long as it's written in a book, then it's fact. So this is the way, these debates have been going. So I thank you for taking your time, for bringing out these sources to explain these facts. You see, the discussion that about the origin of Pan-Africanism and why Pan-Africanism is still necessary, they downplay the reality that we live in without making any social diagnostics to understand the present social location of the Black man, whether the Pan-Africanism that was created then, whether it's still needed today. Are those conditions of the Black man changed? They are not even looking at those things. So one of the reasons they are not looking at it is that they don't understand what cultural identity is. Like you rightly mentioned, Pan-Africanism originally, probably the first thing they wanted to do is to establish the cultural identity of the Black man. Because you can be 1 million people and you can still be weak, because if you don't have an identity that join you together, that show that you have common interest, there's no way you are going to act together as a force.
Yes, sir.
There has to be an idea that join you people together in order for you to act as a unified force. So the ancestors, the scholars, were looking for cultural identity. And cultural identity, according to Dio, has important factors, the historical factors.
Yes, sir.
What has happened to us as Black people in Haiti, in Africa, on the continent, wherever you find yourselves, melanated people, something happened to us. That's a historical factor we all cannot deny. We are where we are today because there's a historical factor. Something happened.
Yes.
You see? Then there's a psychological factor that we all share. We cannot deny this pain. We cannot deny the global white supremacy that have pushed us down the economic ladder. Can we deny that? You see? Then the cultural factor, when you play this music right now, any melanated person from anywhere will feel connected to this song without even knowing what it means.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There's a psychological and cultural factor in all of us. Even if you speak like the Jamaican Padua, you speak the Nigerian. I don't understand the Padua, but I feel that this person is connected to me because it's English, but it's not English. I'm hearing that African way of saying, speaking into it.
Yes.
You see, so there is this culture that we share. So based on this historical factor, the cultural factor, the psychological factor, we now have a common interest to defend the world. There's common interest. How do we defend it? So the philosophy of Pan-Africanism was to give us a clear understanding of how to do that. But don't mistaking the fact that the idea itself predates the philosophy.
Yes, sir.
The fact that all these people came and wrote books about it, the idea predates. That's why you mentioned Haiti, 1804.
Yes, sir.
The bookman duty was not going around talking about Pan-Africanism, but the idea was there.
Yes.
Keep Black men together.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See, Blyden was in Liberia speaking of Ethiopianism. It was Pan-Africanism he was talking about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You see, when this we mentioned the empires in Africa, when Sunjata Keita marched on Niani and captured and developed the Mali Empire, what does he do? He bring all the clans together and created what he called the Kurukan Fuga, the exit of Sunjata.
Yes,
he outlawed slavery. He brought about 44 laws of human rights to protect the people. He said all the clans of Black people must come together. No brother must sell a brother. That was Pan-Africanism.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I just wanted to say the idea, it's the ideology, it predates the philosophy. So that's why Obadele Tambo of Pt2, he wrote The African Origin of Pan-Africanism, where he takes you that the Kushites, what the Kushite did in the 25th dynasty was Pan-Africanism. What even Namer did to bring all these kingdoms, Smitawi, the union of the land. Why were you uniting these people?
For
the
what
union
reason?
to land. It was an act of Africanism. So when people sit down and say African for themselves, therefore there cannot be Pan-Africanism. Honestly, I struggle to understand that logic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Brother Seku. Just as a point, I had the pleasure of hosting Brother Obadele Kambon on this platform a couple years ago as well on that subject, the ancient origins of Pan-Africanism. You can watch that presentation on this panel as well, on this channel, sorry, as well. So do check out the past videos, the ancient origins of Pan-Africanism. Brother Obadele explores primary text, with sources from the Nile Valley to substantiate the fact that the idea of Pan-Africanism existed long time ago. All right. Now, before I go forward into the video again, I just want to point out that the argument that Brother Rabon is making is illogical again, because he's using disunity and discord on the African continent to negate the idea of the existence of a proto-Pan-Africanism prior to the name Pan-Africanism on the African continent. And this argument only makes sense if Brother Rabon is arguing that in the African diaspora, we were blessed with a universal sense of unity. So if an individual king on the African continent collaborating with the enslavement of African people, negates the existence of Africa or Pan-Africanism in an idea on the African continent, then the existence of sellouts or rebellions, yes, in the diaspora negates the existence of Pan-Africanism in the diaspora. The existence of Africans who collaborated in capturing runaways from plantation, yes, negates the existence of Pan-Africanism in the diaspora. Yes, the fact that there were Africans who were enslaved, because Africans were enslaved on ships and were responsible for catching other Africans on the continent of Africa. Yes, so the existence of that negates, if Brother Rawborn's logic is to be taken to its conclusion, the existence of those contradictions among Africans in the United States of, well, what becomes known as the United States of America, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, Haiti, etc., negates. Yes, in Haiti, there were Africans during the rebellion, the revolution, who collaborated with the French, who collaborated with the Spanish, and who collaborated with the British. Yes, Africans. The United, what becomes known as the United States of America, supported those other powers in trying to squash the rebellion in Haiti and sent troops. Some of those troops were enslaved Africans. The existence of that negates the concept of Pan-Africanism in the diaspora then. That's if we're taking Rawborn's argument to its logical conclusion. All right. So let's go forward a little piece more. Man could talk on this for days. Yeah. And I'm sure there's one point that I'm missing, but we'll if I remember it, we'll come back to it. And let's play some more of this video. And a Pan-African movement and its political implications for today's world. Yeah. The justification for Pan-Africanism is about learning the lessons of our history. In fact, I think I'm going to make the point that I forgot to make. So let me just play the video. In as much as Pan-Africanism existed in the diaspora, it doesn't mean that all Africans in the diaspora were united into a Pan-African vision. And so it will be illogical to impose that standard on the African continent. Yeah. So if you find Africans in discord or warring or in dispute, that means that Pan-Africanism did not exist or was not possible on the continent. That's false. Also, just want to acknowledge Chief Fode in the building. Yeah, Chief Fode in the building. We heard that briefly from Chief Fode over there in Sierra Leone last week. And once again, my brother, you know, the platform is open to you should you wish. Yeah, but of course, the obligation. Blessings. It will be like judging the development of Pan-Africanism by the fact that you had Africans in the diaspora who caught runaways from the plantation and sent them back to the plantation. That doesn't make that it will be illogical to do that. So why do we have that same logic on the African continent?
Because Pan-Africanism has a definition to it, man.
Excuse me.
Hold on.
One second. I'm a born and raised Pan-Africanist. I'm very aware of the varying different definitions of Pan-Africanism. It's schools of thought. Pan-Africanism, before it's an ideology, is a goal, yeah, an understanding. And the simple point I'm making, and I don't know why it's difficult to understand, is that the existence of Pan-Africanism in the African diaspora doesn't mean that all of the Africans in that diaspora were united according to a Pan-African vision. So generally speaking, the Pan-Africanists, yeah, not always, but generally speaking, have been among the minorities, yeah, the active Pan-Africanists who are advocating a Pan-African political, economic, social, and cultural theory and practice are often in the minority, yeah, among the diaspora. And that the same can be said for the continent. So if, in as much as we find Africans on the continent who are at discord, and that discord helps to fuel the enslavement process and the colonization process, you will also find examples of Africans on the continent who are unifying and coming together and resisting, yeah, the same, right? And sometimes they're resisting militarily, sometimes they're employing defensive strategies, and so on and so forth. And so in Pan-Africanism, the logic of it is that we look at those dynamics and we see how best we are able to protect each other and ourselves from the forces that are trying to negatively affect our lives and destiny. And so we learn that whether we are on the continent, whether we are in the diaspora, whether we are on ships, yeah, in between the two, our capacity to unify was a defensive and protective strategy that was effective in many different ways. And so the idea is that if we maximize that to its full conclusion, we will be able to throw off the shackles of enslavement and colonialism.
All right, stop right there. Stop right there, bro. Stop right there. Stop right there. Willis Ingram, your time. You up.
All right, appreciate it, panel.
All right. So one thing, and then we'll move on quickly. The point is why this is a point of contention at the moment is the fact that Brother Seku, as he just did a minute ago, used examples from ancient African history to substantiate the ideals of Pan-Africanism in today's world, yeah, as it relates to Africans on the continent, yeah. And this, for some reason, was a point of contention for Brother Raborn, yeah. Again, he's proposing an American-only inception, yes, of Pan-Africanism, and so the idea that Pan-Africanism existed in ideal form, or proto-Pan-Africanism existed in ancient African empires, seems to be problematic for him, yeah, in that regard. But the point here, and I touched on this in part one of this conversation, to check it out, the work of Baba Sheikh Anta Diop in pre-colonial Black Africa, and the idea that we're looking for what he calls, in fact, let me just read the statement. I'm not going to bring it up on the screen just for the sake of time, but I read it last week, yeah. In the book Pre-Colonial Black Africa, yeah, where he's breaking down the constitutions, yeah, and political social organization of various different indigenous African nations and communities. All right, and he makes the statement regarding the intention of the book. He says, however, this work is not properly speaking a book of history, but it is an auxiliary tool indispensable to the historian. It indeed affords him a scientific understanding of all the historical facts hitherto unexplained. In that sense, it is a study in African historical sociology. It permits us no longer to be surprised at the stagnation, or rather the relatively stable equilibrium of pre-colonial African societies. The analysis of their socio-political structures presented in it, allowing us to gauge the stabilizing factors in African society. Yes, once again, allowing us to gauge the stabilizing factors in African society. So all Brother Seku is doing is looking at African history and identifying the stabilizing factors that lend itself towards Pan-African development in today's world. That's all that's taking place. And this is why I say that one of the major things that is lacking, yes, in this modern day, what is referred to as online conscious community, is political education. Yeah, political education that you engage in, yes, that you engage in as a member or as part of a Pan-African organization that is doing work on behalf of African people. Yes, you must engage in political education, and that seems to be very, very low. It's possible to study history and become well versed in the history without having a proper appreciation for the political application of the history that you are studying. And so that sensibility is being challenged, yes, as it stands right about now by a lot of the brothers and sisters, it would seem, yeah. And then, in fact, let me move on. All right. I was going to make that point, and we're going to come back to some stuff in a second.
Okay, I'm going to just pick up right where Shaka left off. I think what we need to do is come together on the idea of Pan-Africanism. Of course,
every country and leader is not going to come together and be like, yes, not the leader of Nigeria and the leader of Ghana is not. They might not do that, but it's about crossing like-minded people and bringing like-minded people together as one. There's like-minded people all around this world that believe in this idea that we believe in, as in us coming together on a common cause to overturn our oppressors. Just like in our communities right there, we're not going to get everybody in New York City. We're not going to get everybody in North Carolina. It's all about connecting to like-minded people. I don't know if I need 2 minutes to say all that, but it's all about connecting like-minded people on the one banner on the one goal, and I think that's very possible to do.
Hey, let me say this, man. Can we on this panel disagree and still be brothers? I'm just saying that as rhetorically, because we got to learn how to agree to disagree as a people. Because if we can't do it in a small forum, it's just 300 people watching. It's not like you got 10,000 people watching. All right. But anyway, Mr. Vegas, your turn, bro. You up?
Yo, bro.
Walk on. You're up, bro.
Yeah, man, big up. I might be even shorter than 2 minutes. What I think happened just now, Seku was onto something, yeah, and it's something that I noticed with Raban, who is now Raded, because Seku make him go hide and go do some research and come back, and him still come back and do his shout and make a bag of noise. Seku,
this is the Mr. Vegas.
Yeah.
Hey, hold on, let him finish.
No, hold on, you can't do them thing there, you know. Hey,
chill, man. Chill. Let him finish.
All right, so let me just apologize for what's about to take place here. What it was, right? He said Mr. Vegas, and I thought it was just somebody called Mr. Vegas, yeah? Me never realized it says the Mr. Vegas. Now, like, anybody who know reggae dancehall music would know that Mr. Vegas is a legendary artist from the 90s, yeah? Right? So I'm listening to the voice, and I realize I'm Mr. Vegas. So I want to big up the brethren. So I'm like, yo, what go on? I just throw Mr. Vegas into the conversation. So I've interrupted. And but what I was trying to do was just big him up, yeah, and say respect Drew and all them thing there. But the brother was obviously, you know, keeping a low profile and just wanted to interact, yeah, as another one of the brothers. And so I was called upon to respect that. But yeah, I had a bit of a moment, because when you see man them that you've been listening to since you was a child, you want to, you know, show them some love, innit? You know what I'm saying? So that's all that was going on here. But this is, for those who are aware, you're listening to the voice of Head's Eye, Mr. Vegas. Yeah, Siggy do Mr. Vegas. All right, so that's why I want to know that. No, listen. Sorry, Garfield. We're not this is the thing, you know. But this is Mr. Vegas, you know. Siggy do. Hey, listen. I do this. And I do this. You can't just drop Mr. Vegas in the conversation, you know.
Good man. A regular audience, man. A regular audience, man.
Not even on that, man. He not even
on
that.
Facts. We're not even depending on something. I just read.
Chill out.
Facts.
Yeah.
So what may I say is, you know, Ankh and of course Raded counter the argument where Seku put forward. Remember saying, no, the debate was, what was the debate? Right? The debate was about what Seku was talking about, because y'all claim that there was no connection. You understand? So Seku come and put the argument forward, and I show you, say, yo, this was the case.
All right. So when he says y'all claim that there was no connection, what he's referring to is the idea there's no connection between Africans in West Africa and Africans in East Africa, specifically in this instance, the Nile Valley. Okay, and so this Pan-African sensibility to find cultural unity and connections between Africans, as far as these people are concerned, is a totally flawed and fanciful and romantic argument as far as the African Centred scholars and the Pan-African movement is concerned. And so Mr. Vegas is saying, well, that was what the discussion was. And in the context of that discussion, Brother Seku is providing connections, not just between the Nile Valley and West Africa, but just between Africans in general, that lend itself to Pan-African development. And so he's saying that y'all have now changed what the argument was about. That's what Mr. Vegas is saying.
Him not have him source, him never put forward, him and say, yo, at a later date, I provide my source. So when him start put forward, and it makes sense now, what happened now? The whole Seku narrative now, our argument now, you notice say, and come on and change the argument, and I say, yo, it cannot happen. It not gonna happen. When Seku never did a push, we say, yo, at this he must stand for Pan-Africanism, must try bring back. He must show you a correlation, basically, of what happened with whatever back in the days, whatever he must show. Pre-colonialism, whatever he must show. That is what he must talk about. So for silence, to make it sound as if Seku is a person when nothing plausible now. When him tell us, say, yo, him not really stand by religion again, and him understands that there are first differences. You understand the dichotomy between a lot of tribes and culture and all of them things. But him say, yo, the common goal is supposed to be for the world. We just like it said a while ago. Just like what you just said, can we disagree on this program and still be brothers? And that's Seku was saying, brother. That's Seku a positive. That's what he posited. He must say, yo, we can disagree and still be brothers. So that he might fight past Africans. The man
No. Yeah. But Vegas, in my thought, let me tell you something. What Seku is basically saying is that in the like the tribalism that's going on in Nigeria, I think everybody on this panel agree with him. But what Onk is saying is that he need to straighten out his own personal life first before he even will step out to try to unite with everybody else. You have to straighten out him also. Hold on. So the thing is not like Seku is wrong. Me personally, I don't see it happening. I think there's a certain amount of people that's going to unite, but it won't happen.
It is not saying it's going to happen, Garfield. That we're not conflating points. He's not saying it's going to happen. You ask him, remember, say the man make pastor, rather I dig up the dumpster, you know. I search for something to count and I can't find anything, you know. So I catch him around there, I search, you know, him come back now and I put up something on the screen.
So basically what Mr. Vegas is saying is that what the people them have done is instead of address and what Brother Seku is saying, they've made it an argument about whether Pan-Africanism is possible or not, can work or not, which is not even necessarily what Brother Seku was alluding to. He was actually making an argument about the connections between the African peoples, and so when they made it an argument about Pan-Africanism, he said, well, these connections can be used for Pan-African development. These are examples of proto-Pan-Africanism. I'm just following because obviously I've started the conversation in the middle of it, so just in case ones may be having difficulty following the conversation. All right, okay, let's go forward.
And I said it's not working. What Seku argument was based on? You were asking where him stand now. I'm gonna try explain to you, brother. I'm gonna try on him. I'm Seku. That's what I call him, because I want Seku not to follow Ank and Raded down which part of the path. I'm try take him. He have to get back on the track where he must prove what he stood by yesterday, what he said yesterday. That was it. Him say, yo, he misspoke yesterday. Him say resurrection, and in that resurrection, matter about the afterlife. You understand? So him basically correct him argument yesterday and assure why him take the stance when him take or why him position is what it is. Basically that him say. Ra and Raded and Anka try mislead the argument now to a different direction. And that me I tell Seku say, stay on point, Seku, because we are listening.
For anybody who hasn't picked it up, Raded is referring to Raban. I'm just identifying that real quick.
And we as black people, we have to continue preaching the message of Marcus Garvey, everybody that preach. Everybody can't just say we give up. And we're not going to say that. Because you have black people out there willing to listen. That's why we follow your Garfield, and that's why we share your message. And that's why we followed you when you were not a Christian and you were basically standing up and telling us that, yo, and adding to what Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark them put forward, say, yo, the whole thing is a myth and black people need to realize it's a myth and nobody will come to save us. That's the message.
Yep. I hear you.
Hey, can I speak?
Hold on, let me say, yeah, Federated, it's your turn.
Yep. Yeah, Mr. Vegas, what's up? I'm a big fan, but Aunt is my master teacher. Everybody should know that. But Seku, me and you are from the same country, Liberia.
Forgive me, but for the sake of time, I'll just realize how far we are into the show, and I know there's quite a bit to get through. So for the sake of time, let me fast forward a little piece. Yeah,
you did. But also, we went in the war with my great grandfather, namely the Crew War, back in the early 1900s, when we went against the Black Americans. You dig? And during that war, that president of that time, I forgot his name, of Liberia. Matter of fact, I think he was actually from the Bahamas, but you know, he was still called a free American slave. He killed 72 chiefs of the crew. And my great grandfather fought against them. You know, I felt like, I mean, what I read upon, I think, you know, the crew won. I think my grandfather people won. But, you know, either.
Yeah, so basically the point the brother's making is he's given examples of wars that have taken place. He said he's from the same place as Brother Seku, which is Liberia, and he's given examples of wars that have taken place between various different groups of people in that region as a justification for, again, why Pan-Africanism can't work. Brother Seku, do you have anything to say on this point? Just in case you do, because you're a country this.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's the same argument they are making in Cypher. That brother was saying those who came from the founders of Liberia, some of them came out of the Caribbean, some came from the United States, and they came. So there was confrontation between them and quote unquote natives on the land. And so because he said there was this misunderstanding, therefore, why should we talk of Pan-Africanism? You know, this logical fallacy, it keep repeating. And I don't understand why they are making such an argument. You have people that their ancestors were enslaved in the Americas. They were born in white supremacy. The only thing they know was Christianity and the Bible, and they refer to their brothers as savages. And these people were brought, sponsored, financed by white supremacy, and tell them to go and settle in Liberia. There were genuine ones who were having the spirit of Pan-Africanism, but they were in the minority. Those that were in the majority and having the power, they were connected to the US government. These people come and they have confrontation with the native, which is natural. So now you want to use that as a basis to say Pan-Africanism is not possible. So I really struggle to understand that. For me, I think just because these historical events happen, because these struggles exist, is the more reason why Pan-Africanism is necessary.
Of course.
Because these events and these struggles tells us a lot about our history, tells us what has happened, what ideology we have taken on.
Of course.
It has told us what kind of white culture that we have imbibed and what exactly need to be done. Without conflict, you don't really find a resolution. So I think this conflict were even a stepping stone for us. They were necessary for us to really understand in which direction we need to go. But what I hear them say is that because these conflicts exist, therefore we should not unite. That's why I was telling them on this show. I said there is a presidential election going to take place soon in Nigeria. And the three candidates, the three most popular candidates, come from the three major ethnic groups. So imagine each of them start to talk only to their people and say, vote for me because I come from your ethnic group. We are not the same with this guy from the north. And the guy said that these people from the south, we are not the same with them, so vote for me. So we are not going to have a country. We are going to have a tribal war. What we need to do is to let these people know that we have something greater. These tribes and these tribal identity are important, but now they have to also understand that the nationhood, the Pan-African idea is superior for the necessity of our existence. Because in order for us to exist today in the world that is charging against us, in this powerful economics giant that are charging towards Africa, we cannot survive by tribal ideology. We cannot survive by trying to build ourselves into different ethnic groups. We need to build a bigger ideology that brings all of us into one umbrella. There's what I call the great unions of the world.
Yes,
the United States, one example of the great union. Not all white people in America come from Germany. Not all white people in America come from France. Some of them are Irish, some are British. They all came together, but they were united around an idea. And that idea produced the United States.
Yes, sir.
So why are you denying us?
Yes,
They
sir.
are creating an idea based on our suffering, based on what has happened to us, to create a powerful force that can be a force for good to protect Black people, both on the continent and abroad. So I'm saying Pan-Africanism is the future. It is the present. And it remained the last hope of the Black man. I don't care how Black people avoid Pan-Africanism, they will return to it one way or the other.
Yes, sir.
When these present rulers of Africa betray Pan-African leaders and they decided to remain in this colonial territory called states, Nigeria. Yes. What is Nigeria? A Royal Niger Company or a country of niggers? That's what it means. Okay? Gold Coast, where the Europeans used to go steal gold. Ivory Coast, where the Europeans used to go steal elephants and ivory. Is that the names? Sierra Leone, where the lions high in the mountain. Is that those countries? Those are direction, geographical direction for European thieves and criminals. When they are traveling, this is the words they use to tell themselves, let's meet at the Ivory Coast where we steal ivory. Let's meet at this place. So we need to sit down. And I ended with one statement last night, if you remember. I said, modern Africa and modern African country is the product of the white man imagination and the white man dream. What is the product of our imagination? That's the question I'm asking them.
And what we're seeing, is an attack on Africans who are able to envisage, who are able to use that imagination, and envisage, an African people, an African political formation that is not governed and dominated by the white man. That's what's happening at the moment, and that is the question: what is the Africa of our vision, of our imagination? That is the fundamental.
I didn't cut you on. There's a lot of these things. They deny us the right to create an ideology. They deny us the right to even think. I hear one of them. They attacked Brother Jabari. They said Jabari used the word tamhul to refer to white people, and it's inaccurate. When you go to the Meduneda, the word it does not refer to white people. So I said, okay, go all your books that you read in your school, you refer to white people as Caucasians. Have you one day thought that the word Caucasian is pseudo? Have you questioned any white people that they shouldn't use the word Caucasian? Have you questioned any of them? Anything they use the word they want to use for politics, because you forget that wars, history, all these things are political instruments. You use them for your advantage. We decide today and call the white man tamhu. Who can deny all that right to do that?
If we want to use it, we use it. Yeah, that's
the white people. I use it as my political tool. What do you want me to stop me from doing it? When they were calling themselves Aryans, calling themselves Caucasians, the first people on the planet. Until today, they use it. Did you fight them? So we don't have the right also to have an ideological view, to call them certain name and nomenclature, to be able to classify them instead of using the word European or whatever we decide to call them a tamhu. So denying us the right to even create an ideology. I don't get it.
Yes, it's silly. It's a silly argument, and I've like I said, I was thrown off the panel for being a Jabari, and the reason why I'm not delving into all that stuff at the moment, I'm trying to stay away from unnecessary argument. But I will say for now that the attack, that and some of the things that have been said about Brother Jabari, I find to be repugnant, and totally unnecessary, and I'm lost as to why and where a lot of that attack comes from. It doesn't make any sense to me, and to be quite frank, I just find it unprincipled. A lot of the attacks that he has faced, and I'm not talking about disagreeing with Brother Jabari. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about sharing a different perspective to him on a scholarly point. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about some of the attacks against his personhood, his character, and the institution, that he is organizing within and for and on behalf of, But we can't talk right now, okay? All right, we'll talk later, okay? All right, you okay? Okay, good boy. And I just find it unprincipled, and I will say that, publicly. All right. Having said that, I read from this book here, Class Struggle in Africa, last week. All right. Let me just big up the screen for a second. Yeah, so people can see Class Struggle in Africa. Yeah, last week. The reason why I'm bigging it up this week again is because you can look at how Africans who had a Pan-African vision address the issue of so-called tribe and tribalism. Yeah, there's a distinction between those two things, as the Osage for Kwame Nkrumah outlines in this book. Yeah, and so again, political education is necessary because the Pan-Africanists appreciated and understood the existence of what the Europeans refer to as tribe, often rejected the terminology of tribe because it was a colonial imposition, yeah, and sought to unite African people and develop ways and means of uniting African people across these nationhood formations, yeah, which are referred to as tribes, right? So you can check out Class Struggle in Africa. You can also check out Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism, yeah, for an exposition on this as well, and as well as how the colonizer used the concepts of tribe in order to divide and conquer and colonize and neocolonize African people. You can check out the writings of Amilcar Cabral. Yeah, this is one compilation of his writings and speeches, Unity and Struggle. Yeah, Amilcar Cabral, who was the revolutionary leader in what is referred to as Guinea-Bissau, one of the underrated, yeah, of our African liberation freedom fighters. Check him out. All right, so I'm just providing some information for political education and sources for people that Africans on the continent who looked at the tribal conflict dynamics and what they said and did in relation to uniting African people across those limitations. All right, I'm gonna play some more of the conversation. This one might be a bit of a long play, and then we'll get into some stuff. I'm gonna be providing a lot of sources after this next one. All right, so let's stay tuned.
He only believe his own vision. Okay, then you want like, yeah. So
I mean, I get both. It's
Yo, whoa, what I miss here, man? What I miss here?
You up? It's your turn. No, I'm sorry, not your turn yet. That's Unc, and then you.
It's my turn, ain't it?
Yeah, go ahead, Unc.
Yeah. So I think I just like living in reality.
I'm sorry. Unc, then Seku, and then Robon. Go ahead.
Yeah, I basically just like living in reality, and meaning the world that we live in. And I like examples. So if you want me to follow Garvey, I'm saying, damn, we got iPhones now, like handheld computers. Garvey ain't never went to damn Africa. Okay, he only believe his own vision.
There is so much, yeah, that can be said on just those couple sentences. All right, I'm not gonna go into all of it right now. Firstly, to point out, where I listen to is an African who is not using his African mind to do what Brother Seku has just asked. What is the Africa of our vision and our imagination? Yeah, this African vision doesn't extend that far. And so because his own vision doesn't seem to extend that far, he is imposing the limitations of his own conceptualization on the rest of us and saying it's not going to happen. That's what's taking place right there. All right. And I say that with all due respect, but that is exactly what is taking place right there. So, all right. The second thing is you're looking at examples. Yeah. Marcus Garvey, we have iPhones now. First of all, the iPhone exists as a result of the colonization and neocolonization of Africa and African people. There would be no iPhone. Yes, categorically, I'm saying this. If it was not for the extent to which Europeans have been able to appropriate the natural resources of Africa and African people, it wouldn't exist. Secondly, what does the advances in technology have to do with negating the philosophy and movement of an African freedom fighter? Yeah, Marcus Garvey lived between 1887 and 1940. Okay, 1887 and 1940. Prior to his existence, there was a guy called Abraham Lincoln, who was a president of the United States of America. I've never heard a European say that the philosophy of Abraham Lincoln is no longer valid and relevant because we have iPhones now. I've never heard a European say that the philosophy and the stature of Winston Churchill is no longer relevant because we have iPhone now. Furthermore, all of what unifies culturally the geopolitical entity known as the West, yeah, deriving from Western Europe and extended its tentacles around the world in the United States of America, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, France, etc., 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 is their tie to Greece and Rome 1,500 years ago. I have never heard a European say, we have iPhone now, so the culture of Greece and Rome is irrelevant to I and I right now. Never heard it. Yeah? But it was Marcus Mosiah Garvey who said that we must raise a generation of scientists par excellence before in science and religion lies our only hope to withstand the evils of modern materialism. Philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey, if you want to know where it there. Sorry, in the speech, African Fundamentalism, which you can read in Philosophies and Opinions, but also in the book African Fundamentalism. What's that, Wisdom? Okay, go to Mama. Take it to Mama. Oh, no, Baba needs this, okay? So get paper from Mama. In fact, sorry, Kings and Queens. Look parenting I forgot on while they're live, you know? Here's some paper, okay? You want to just draw in? Yeah? Ask Mama for pencil, okay? Okay. All right, where was I? Yeah. Papa Garvey said, yeah, that the battles of the future, the present and the future, are going to be fought along scientific lines. Philosophies and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, Volume 1. And the nation or race that was the most power, paraphrasing this part, in science and technology will ultimately be the nation or race that rules and governs. Yes, what we? Not right now, couldn't say. Okay, not right now. You draw it, okay? And Bob will come look in the beats, okay? All right, I'll see him come. Then, take care of the with me, please. My name, please. All right. Yes, Kings and Queens. Yeah, that's what Marcus Mosiah Garvey said. All right. Now, when he say, "Can I draw him?" Say, "In one, you for draw for him." That's what he want. Yeah. What am I saying? What was that? Yeah. So how are we justifying a negation of Marcus Mosiah Garvey based upon the idea that him never we have iPhone now? I need more exposition on that, please. That's the first thing. The second is this idea that Marcus Garvey didn't believe in his own idea because he didn't go to Africa. I'm not going to go into this except to say that that statement is based upon a false idea of what the program and philosophy of the UNIA ACL actually was. Yeah, and it's unfortunate that within the conscious community, people buy into general white supremacist ideas of what Marcus Garvey said, stood for, and acted upon, and what the UNIA philosophy and program actually was. Yeah, not going to go into it because my last episode of the Pan-African Question explores African fundamentalism or universal African nationalism, which is the philosophy and ideology of the UNIA ACO. And so if you want to understand why what Brother Ark just said is absolutely false and ill-informed and illogical, watch the video, yeah? And I will point out that it's been a long time, yeah, since I've heard Brother Ark say the words Black African power. And I think we're getting a reasoning, a justification as to why in this discourse. Brother Ark has not said the words Black African power for some time, at least according to my hearing. And I think we understand why as a result of this discourse.
Okay. Then you want all of Africa unified. When was that? One happened in 300 BCE. Didn't happen 250 BCE. It ain't never happened. Nobody. Not the name. I'm gonna say this again. Listen, right? I'm not a hater.
Javier just points out that the Europeans go back all the way to Plato to Rotted, which is true. Yeah, me go college in the early 2000s and me study Plato and Socrates from Greece. Yeah, we did have iPhone them time there. Yeah, iPhone did debut when we did study Plato in a college. Oh.
Yeah, I'm a participator. Let's take a look at the quote unquote Native Americans. When was they ever they fought wars? Why? They all the same people. They don't know that though. They don't know. They the same people. They come over to Bering Strait. They mutate in North America. They break off. Some go all the way down to South America. Get a little bit darker. They fight the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Olmecs. They the same people. They fought wars against it. Like, what do we like? If we're gonna help each other, right? As African people or African Americans, then we at least got to tell the truth. And I'm thinking it's a cult now. At this point, you trying to fake me out, get me sucked up in something that ain't never worked, and you're not telling the truth. It's a lofty, crazy dream. We're going to unify. No, we not. Matter of fact, let me give you an example in North America amongst the African Americans. You got Crips, you got Bloods, you got GDs. But what the hell? Ain't we the same people? And we know we the same. Hold on. I'm going to say this real slow. We're not in a time period where they didn't have iPhones and computers and Wikipedia and dictionaries. We're in a time period where we got all that shit. And African Americans.
Now he keeps making this point, yeah. What this point actually means in substantive terms is that because everything that he just mentioned, iPhones and Wikipedia and all kinds of things, are developments of Western civilization. Developments, many of which our labor as African peoples on the continent and in the diaspora have been used to forward and facilitate, but ultimately, these are developments and advances that have been done in the name of white power. And so it seems as though the implicit thought within Brother Ark's statement is that technological advancement of white people and their nation states negates the liberation fight of African people. Somehow, all of these technological and scientific advances of Britain and America and France nullifies the philosophy and movement of Marcus Mosiah Garvey and the UNIA ACL and all of our great freedom fighters and liberators in the name of Pan-African and African nationalist development. That is the implicit idea in what Brother Ark is saying. Once again, you can't forward an idea like that and then say Black African power after it. So we know why he hasn't said it for a long time.
Americans is not unified. You got the young brothers and sisters killing each other over colors and different gang members. Wait a minute. They do the same thing in North America in 1950s. They had the gangs. You ever heard of the gangs in New York? The mafia, all that. So human beings never do that. You get a certain amount and that's it. You form a state called United States, right? You calm it down. Okay, you have states. You allow the states to have their own separate rules and regulations. We don't even got the same rules and regulations across the United States, let alone Africa. Do you know how big Africa is? You got different ecological. Africa's so big, you got different ecological niches, and y'all run around talking about Pan-African. Y'all don't believe the Pan-Africanists? Okay, when did Pan-Africanism ever win? Where's the victory at? We at least want to see a victory. Hey, we can see the victory Martin Luther King did, though. Where does Pan-Africanists help the African American? They can't even help Africa. Where's that example at? Wait a minute. I heard somebody say this. I think it was Chef said this. We was on a conversation. He was like, wait a minute, man. Show me that this shit work in Africa. Yeah, make it work in Africa. And once I see it, then I'm going to believe you. Then I might join the fight. How about a half a victory? How about a partial victory? I ain't seen none of that. So I'm not hating. Y'all just mad because I'm being honest. Man, it was a good idea. Yeah, I mean, it was very lofty. Now, 50 years later, you realize it didn't work. It couldn't work, and there was no possibilities of working. So then we're not gonna be crazy at this point and keep pushing a square through a round peg or a peg through a square. However you want to say it, we're not gonna sit here and keep bumping our head on the damn wall. I'm done.
Oh well.
Can I ask a question?
I'm all for the question.
Let's Seku
I
get
think
his 2
it's
minutes.
now
Let's
my
Seku-
turn.
Yeah, let's Seku get his.
All right. So first of all, you notice that there were no sources brought in that exchange, right? And secondly, again, as I said, made it clear in the first video, what we're seeing here is a clash of goals. Yeah. So because ones are not impassioned by the Pan-African goal, they are trying to negate it, yes, and its possibilities and its realities. Yeah. And that's all that's taking place at the moment. It's not a particularly honest reasoning. And this is exemplified by the fact that it is said, once you don't make it work in Africa, then maybe I'll join the fight. So what? Everybody wants to plant. No, nobody wants to plant the corn. Everybody wants to raid the barn. That's what's going on right about now. Yeah. Nobody want to plant corn. Everybody want to raid barn. Yeah. So want to make it work over there, so. And maybe when you plant the corn and reap all the corn, maybe I'll come over and eat some corn with you. That's the argument. So I'm not going to help you plow and sow a seed and, get rid of weed and all them things there. We're not going to help you in them something there. Yeah, we're not going to do them thing there. But when the corn reap, then we're going to come near some corn we don't know. Yeah. And that's a go on right here now. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So whereas the Pan-Africanist is impassioned by the need to bring into existence what one ideals, yes, what one conceives of in one's mind. The Pan-Africanist is not waiting on chance. Chance has never yet satisfied the hope of a suffering people. Action, self-reliance, the vision of self, and the future have been the only means by which the oppressed have seen the light of their own freedom. The prophet Marcus Mosiah Garvey says so. We're not waiting on chance. Yeah. So there are those who want to wait on chance. Yeah. They're betting. Yeah. They're going, for basically whoever has the most power at the moment. So if you lot can make it happen, well, I'll come over there. So when you have the power. Yeah, we're not going to contribute to the movement of developing and amassing the power to make things happen, but we're going to come and reap the rewards of the power that others have actioned and built up in the future. So go.
It's 2 minutes.
Yeah, give Seku his hour. Go ahead, Seku. Well, I've got my pen and pad for your hour. Go ahead, Seku hour. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you to the first two brothers that spoke before Ankh. You see, the idea of Pan-Africanism, I see there was argument about who started it or who didn't start it. Everybody knows it started in the diaspora. But one of the authors that people always forget, one of the philosophers of Pan-Africanism is Elwa Wilmot Blyden. Blyden, who was a diplomat in Liberia, but he came from the Caribbean before settling in Liberia. Blyden started talking about Ethiopian.
Just note, yeah, there's not a whole leap left to go that I'm going to be playing anyway. All right. So stay tuned. Yeah. But this next section is going to become very important. Very, very, very important. So listen carefully.
First.
Get your pen and paper and all these things.
He wasn't even using the term Pan-Africanism. He was talking about Ethiopianism. You see, what we call the pioneers of African intellectual proof, what they found out was that there was a need for the African identity, both in the diaspora, even on the continent. They discovered that we've been bastardized. Our continent was destroyed. A lot of has happened. We've been enslaved. We've been dehumanized. In Arabia, anywhere you go, with our melanated skin, we've been dehumanized. Now, how do you bring people who have been dehumanized, how do you bring them back to build a nation, a culture, to be respected again in the community of nations? This was a question that the ancestors were faced with. So they saw it, they coined this term Pan-Africanism. As you know, this is a cultural movement. It has this political wing of uniting people together. It has cultural aspect. It has economic wing of it and everything. You said, what benefit of Pan-Africanism for the African continent? Well, look at the first Congress and the second Congress of the Pan-African Congress. Who attended this Congress? People from East Africa. I think Jomo Kenyatta was there. I think Nnamdi Azikiwe from Nigeria were there. These people became the first leaders on the continent. Kwame Nkrumah. Are there any leader better than this founding father? There has never been a better president in Nigeria than Nnamdi Azikiwe. There has never been a better president in Ghana than Kwame Nkrumah. There has never been a better president than Nyerere of Tanzania. These people fought for the liberation of the continent. It was the Pan-African philosophy that inspired the fight for freedom. If you have an Africa today with a black president they're passing around, thanks to Pan-Africanism. If it did not succeed to put the continent together, it succeeded to some degree to push the European out. It succeeded to some degree to create what you call the Organization of African Unity today, that is speaking on behalf of black people around the world. Even if it has not done well, it has been infiltrated by Europeans still, but through their neo-colonial policies. Because traitors have taken over the continent. They kill all the Pan-African leaders and they destroy them because they were pessimistic, like Brother Ankh. They were pessimistic, like Rabon. They were pessimistic about creating a glorious future. So they killed the Pan-African leader. They betrayed them. That's why we are where we are today, because they were pessimistic like you guys. Now you talk about the tribe on the continent will never unite. It never did. Well, when Ouagadougou Empire was created, it was not only the Soninke who lived there. The Saragule was there. The Malinke were there. The Soso were there. Why did they come together? They could have stayed. Each of them should stay on their land. When Sundiata Keita fought against Zumawuru Kante to establish the Mali Empire, they were different clans in Mali. He called for a meeting, Furukurukan Fuga, he called for a meeting to create peace, to create a kingdom. When Nama marched on the Nama Palace to create Kemet, it's because they were different groups. Napata, every kingdom in West Africa, or in Africa, it was group of tribe, ethnic groups that came together either by war or by just sitting down and having an agreement, but somehow they all came together to form empires or kingdoms. That is a philosophy of Pan-Africanism, not because we use it today. So if the entire continent does not come together, then Pan-Africanism has failed. No. Mali, Guinea, Ghana, they wanted to form a country. Modibo Keita and all these people, they signed a document before the assassination happened, before Kwame Nkrumah was removed. A document was on the table for Seku Ahmed Toure, Modibo Keita, and Kwame Nkrumah signing the document to create one country in West Africa before they were all removed.
All right, thank you.
So what we are trying to tell you, what I want to conclude to tell you, Pan-Africanism is moving.
You trying to land the plane, yo? You should have took off in the first place.
We've been talking for 5 minutes straight. 5 minutes straight. Hey, Seku,
okay.
Thank you, my
brother. Is it 5 minutes? This is 5 minutes?
Thank you.
Don't do it.
It's 2 minutes, but you've been talking for 5 minutes. I'm serious. I have the clock right here. I ain't stopping.
Okay, I stopped.
I ain't want to stop your flow. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, what I wanted to do here, just let me read it very quick. I'm reading from the book.
Wait till it come back around to you, bro. Don't worry about it. We here all night. Just relax. I got you. Rob on you.
Land that.
Brother Seku is not with us at the moment, but I wanted to know from him what he was about to read. I was interested to know that. But yeah, you said the vibes anyway. I'm not even sure if he was speaking for 5 minutes. I never timed it, but just note that. It's going to become important in a second. Just to point out, I'm not going to stay too long on this because there's some other points I want to get to, but Brother Seku is absolutely correct in the history that he ran down. Yeah, when you talk about successes on the African continent. And by the way, later on in the conversation, Rabon is going to lambast Brother Seku for speaking on Africa and African politics when he was responding to Ankh's question about what Pan-Africanism has achieved on the continent of Africa. Yeah, he was directly responding to that question in terms of the rundown that he just gave. Yeah, and when he says, for example, that there was never been a president as better than Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, this is true, as to all reasonable attestations. And I'm not going to bring this up on the screen for the sake of time, but just to say, reading from a presentation that my father constructed, Brother Leader Bandaka constructed, in relation to the dynamics surrounding the Ebola pandemic here. After colonialism, Nkrumah comes to power in Ghana in 1957, the 6th of March, 1957. And he's overthrown in February of 1966. Yeah. And in that space of time, which is less than 10 years, he built 30 new clinics in Ghana, quadrupled the number of doctors and dentists. Yeah. Started over 100 new industries. Yeah. And numerous factories were built in glass, sugar refinery, textile printing, plant, chocolate manufacturing, meat processing, radio assembly, printing, a printing plant, matches, even shoes, nails, sweets, soft drinks, alcohol, cigarettes, etc., etc. Invested heavily in agriculture. He also significantly increased electricity in the nation. Developed housing projects, built hundreds of miles of road. In fact, when I was in Ghana, I traveled on the Tema motorway, and that is a motorway that Nkrumah built, and it hasn't needed any significant repairs done to it from the time it was built, which is I think 1960 until now. Yeah, because of the materials he built out of, he had the wherewithal to build out of concrete as opposed to conventional tarmac. Yeah, and Ghana, Guinea, Mali Union is what Brother Seku was referring to, the agreement that was signed between Ghana, Guinea, and Mali before each of those presidents were either overthrown or assassinated. That's aside for Kwame Nkrumah, Secretary, and Modibo Keita. What he didn't mention was the fact that Kwame Nkrumah had also signed a secret agreement, yeah, with Patrice Lumumba in the Congo in 1960, soon after the Congo gains its independence, for the Congo to join the Union and for the headquarters of the Union to be in the Congo. Yeah, this letter and agreement is in the book. It's either Africa Must Unite, or is it in Neocolonialism and the Last Age of Imperialism? One or two. Yeah. And what happened was, obviously that agreement became null and void after the Americans, the British, the French, and the Belgians collaborated to assassinate Papa Patrice Lumumba. Okay. And so these are all elements of Pan-African unity. And one other, yeah, one of the biggest vestiges of neocolonialism and colonialism in this time is the fact that a number of formerly colonized by French African nations still pay collectively to the tune of $500 billion into the French central bank. Yeah, this is as a result of this continuation of colonialism pact that France imposed upon its former colonies during the post-colonial period. The nation of Guinea, under the leadership of Seku Touré, refused to sign the agreement, and the French, as a result, in response, destroyed a lot of the infrastructure, land, buildings, electric cables, roads, yeah, and all kind of different things in Guinea before they left. And Kwame Nkrumah loaned Guinea £10 million, yeah, for it to begin to rebuild itself. You know, and as a part of that, you know what I'm saying, that the Guinea Ghana Mali Union was developed, and so on and so forth. Yeah, but again, the question being asked as to what are the achievements of Pan-Africanism is one that shouldn't be asked in the conscious community among people that study, because and it's only a question because of the lack of political education that currently exists in this particular iteration of the conscious community. Yeah, especially as it relates to online and so on and so forth. Okay, we're gonna leave that there and go forward with the conversation. By the way, peace to the chat. I'm not ignoring you. It's just that I've got a lot to get through, and I don't want to be here whole night. You know what I mean? So Misiono, big up yourself, big up King Kale in the building, big up everything is everything. Big up Unlugani. I never did get where that name comes from. I'd love to know where that name comes from. Unlugani. Big up Jacob. Yes, indeed, Mr. Vegas is certainly a legend. Chief Fuller said he won't be able to join us today. That's no problem. Although I'd love for him to go in because Sierra Leone is mentioned later, but he's a master on the Sierra Leone thing. We got African Resistance TV. So yeah, we got yourself to the chat. All right.
Plane, say cool, land that plane.
Go ahead, Rob. You want?
Yo, this is nuts, bro. Wow, that's all I can say, man. So I'm gonna share my screen. I'm not gonna make up things. We don't do that over here. I'm just waiting to this thing hold up here. These terms that we talking about have definitions to it. This brother is on here talking about how Egypt united. That was something that was done for war. It was war for one group to rule another group. Pan-Africanism definition has nothing to do with anyone going to war. Stop it. With other dogs, with other people of the African descent. It is the unification of them. So now we're gonna deal with definitions of terms here and not make up stuff. Routledge Handbook of Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism refers to a movement and ideology centered on the belief that peoples of African descent throughout the continent and the diaspora share a common past and destiny. This shared understanding of the past future informs how people of African descent mobilize against racial discrimination, colonialism, economic, political, and social cultural oppression. Pan-African history includes chronicling the variety of ideas, activities, and movements. Oh, what's up with you? That celebrated Africanists resisted the exploitation and expression of those of African descent and opposed of these ideologies of racism. When you start with the ideology of dealing with recognizing the Africanness, we're going down to what Aunt brought up, and he said, well, what did it achieve? What's the movement? What came out of it? What happened? These movements that were created were the African Masonic Lodge. The term of Pan-Africanism is one dealing with celebrating your Africanness. That is the first thing. This is why we named our institutions that. What did this form of Pan-Africanism do? He did what? He wrote the first bill for reparations. That first reparations to Belinda Royal. He then petitioned the people to do what? He petitions the people to be free and create the first Black school here in the Americas, utilizing the philosophy of Pan-Africanism as it was developed and made in America before the term even came about. This brother brought up Edward Blyden. Before him, you have Martin Delany. He goes to Africa prior. He goes, and when he goes over there, he does what? He goes without the ACS, and he goes to make treaties with who? With the African people. You forgot to left out what happened to Mr. Blyden. They beat his ass up in the street in Africa and ran him out. This is because you don't know this, Mr. Seku. Now,
all right, so he says a lot in this part. Yeah, I'm gonna pause it periodically and just do a couple of the points that he's making. And I want you to appreciate what the argument that he's setting up against Brother Seku. Yeah. He's setting up a Black Americans versus continental Africans type beef dynamic, yeah. And as though Brother Seku was speaking on the history of Black Americans, he wasn't. He was speaking on the history of Pan-Africanism and African nation states and how certain of the principles that govern those nations can contribute to Pan-African development in today's world. So just notice, yeah, the misdirection in Brother Rabo's argument at this moment in time. All right. Now, I'm going to deal with first the definition of Pan-Africanism, and then we're going to look at the piece about Martin Delany. All right. Let's nail the two of them thing there very quickly. Okay. So let me stop sharing this for a second. And notice here that the thing that he read in terms from Rootleg here, Handbook of Pan-Africanism, even what he read kind of defeats his own argument. He's bringing the definition of Pan-Africanism to negate what others have said about Pan-Africanism. All right. But the thing itself speaks of the fact, the book he's referring to, which is here, yeah, just so you can see, so it's the same book. Let me go to the top. All right, so you can see the cover. Yeah, same book. Yeah, Rootleg, Handbook of Pan-Africanism. Doesn't make the claim that there is one definition of Pan-Africanism, and nobody who studied it would actually make that claim. Yeah, nobody who's a significant student of Pan-Africanism is going to make the claim that there is one definition of Pan-Africanism. So let's go forward and see what the book actually says, and then we'll touch on another book that is actually quoted in this book. Right. It says, in Pan-Africanism, the idea, the movement, Peter Osilanwush Esedebe stated that when Pan-Africanism began, and precisely, quote, who launched it will never be known, unquote. Consequently, he admonished in, quote, in discussing the origin of Pan-Africanism, what one should look for is the period when the sentiments or concepts underlying it first attracted attention, unquote. Which is what we've been doing, which is what Brother Seku has been doing. As Esedebe illustrated, from the 18th century through to the 20th century, there have been numerous definitions and expressions of what might loosely be termed Pan-Africanism. Mention should also be made of the fact that what was called Pan-Africanism between 1900 and 1975, by the last quarter of the 20th century and through the first quarter of the 21st century, is frequently dubbed Black internationalism. Most Pan-African historians concur that modern Pan-Africanism commenced with the Pan-African Congress convened in London in 1900. However, few Pan-African historians or otherwise have come to consensus regarding exactly what Pan-Africanism is and what it is not, or its exact relationship to 21st century conceptions of Black internationalism. So this requires some nuance. Yeah, the conversation requires some nuance. It requires some education. It requires some investigation. Yeah, that is done when you are in a Pan-African organization or study group. You will explore all of these dynamics and permutations. Okay. But if you're not engaged in that kind of work, maybe you're not as cognizant of that fact. All right. The book goes on. This is the book that Brother Rabour quoted, yeah, to give the definition, to negate what everybody else is saying. He wants to give the definition of Pan-Africanism. The book says, without in any way apologizing for the patronizing attitudes of early diaspora Pan-Africanists, there are some problematic ideas among early Pan-Africanists. Yeah, many of these dialectical Pan-Africanists readily remind us that the divide and conquer was one of the key tactics European colonizers utilized to racialize, colonize, and enslave Africa and Africans. A key aspect of the divide and conquer strategy was the colonizers' insidious desire to create disunity, distrust, and spread interracial misinformation and mayhem amongst the colonized, embracing what I term dialectical Pan-Africanism, which critically engages and grapples with both the good and bad, the positives and negatives, and beauty and ugliness of Pan-Africanism. This latter group of dialectical Pan-Africanists believe that the Pan-African idea and movement has helped much more than it has harmed continental and diaspora Africans in their quest to rescue and reclaim their humanity. So the argument about tribalism, and credit to Brother Ankh, because he at least didn't confine the conflict to the African continent and spoke of conflict among Africans in the Americas as well. Yes, but wherever conflict exists among African people that hinders us in our fight for total liberation is not an argument against Pan-Africanism. It is an argument for Pan-Africanism, because a lot of these conflicts are deliberately manufactured or are a consequence of the conditions that we were subjected to as a result of the Ma'afa: invasion, colonization, enslavement, near-colonization, globalization. And so in order to throw off the shackles of this oppression, one of the things that we have to achieve is not allowing the colonizer to disunite us in certain kinds of ways. This is an argument for Pan-Africanism, not against it. If tribalism, so-called, helps to facilitate the enslavement and the colonial process, then in order for us to withstand the enslavement and colonial process, we must find ways of uniting across so-called tribal lines. If what they refer to as gang warfare or postcode beef or political violence in the Americas, in the United States of America, or in the island of Jamaica, contributes to the neo-colonization of people in the Caribbean and the internal colonization of people in the United States, African people in the United States of America, then we need to find ways of overcoming that, unifying across quote-unquote gang lines, unifying across political lines in Jamaica and the United States of America. This is not an argument against Pan-Africanism, it's an argument for it. And one of the things that we look at is the examples of the fact that Africans built social political formations that were not confined to so-called tribe, which is what Brother Seku was doing, which they were challenging him for doing. That we identify the cultural unity of Black Africa, as Baba Sheikh Anta Diop terms it, and suggest that we need to employ the reality of this cultural unity towards achieving new political goals that will develop new political formations. The idea is not that the cultural unity meant that this specific continental unity existed back in the day in terms of a state formation. It's suggesting that a cultural unity exists that can be employed towards developing something new in today's world. That is the argument. Political education is entirely and extremely necessary African people. I'll continue. Hakim Ali opened Pan-Africanism, a history, which I quoted from earlier, by exclaiming, there has never been one universally accepted definition of exactly what constitutes Pan-Africanism, because Pan-Africanism has taken different forms at different historical moments and geographical locations, unquote. According to Jabez Ayodele Langley, in Pan-Africanism and Nationalism in West Africa, 1900 to 1945, note Pan-Africanism and Nationalism in West Africa, 1900 to 1945. Pan-Africanism is not a movement that should be Pan-Africanism not a movement that should be boxed and frozen into epochs and categories. Likewise, noting the complexity of its trajectory, Kurt Young importantly observed that Pan-Africanism has always been saturated with competing points of view on any number of topics. As to be expected, Young continued, quote, canonical disputes will occur in any political tradition as old and as complex as Pan-Africanism. So Rawborn's attempts, to put forward the definition of Pan-Africanism do not match and are not commensurate with the actual reality of the development of the movement and the varying ideologies that come under the Pan-African banner. political education is very important. The book continues. By the way, this is the same book that Brother Rawborn quoted from to give the definition of Pan-Africanism. All of this is to say, as Hakim Adi, author of Pan-Africanism History, observed, quote, there has never been one university accepted definition of Pan-Africanism. However, even if most Pan-Africanists might find it difficult to narrowly define Pan-Africanism, nearly all Pan-Africanists would readily concede that it's an intellectual tradition and political movement that extends back to the 19th century and matured during the first half of the 20th century. Specifically from the Pan-African Conference held in London in 1900s to the All-African People's Conference held in Accra in 1958. Not enough time to go into all of the history. Well, just continuing with quotations that speak to this point, noting the simultaneity, yes, basically different things happening simultaneously, and elasticity of Pan-Africanism. Anthony Bogwes importantly noted Pan-Africanism has been a major stream in the wide complex of Black political thought, touching both the Black radical tradition and the more conservative nuances of Black political thought. Indeed, its apparent elasticity has been accompanied by definitional difficulties. Bearing in mind Pan-Africanism's long, complex, and often contradictory definitional difficulties, I believe that Bogwes captured the sentiment of a great many 21st century Pan-Africanists when he underscored that after all the smoke clears and all the dust has settled, Pan-Africanism is, quote, not a tradition which should be simply located or as a geographical one. You can't look it into one geography, but rather, like all other intellectual and political traditions, is characterized by the questions which it poses. All right, so we're gonna leave that text there. Oh, actually, all right. Although this is the book that Ramon quoted from, although Pan-Africanism undeniably began as a response to colonization of Africa and enslavement of African peoples, it is much more than a mere reaction to the humanization, de-Africanization, racialization, colonization, enslavement, and imperialism throughout the African world. In fact, Hakim Adi and Marika Sherwood contend in Pan-Africanism a history, Pan-African history, political figures from Africa and the diaspora since 1787. Pan-African history includes chronicling ideas. This is what Rowan quoted from now, yeah? Ideas, activities, and movements that celebrated Africanness, resisted exploitation and oppression of those of African descent, and oppose the ideology of racism. In this sense, Pan-Africanism is an ongoing synthesis of anti-racism, counter-colonialism, and the dialectical processes of decolonization and re-Africanization. Bearing this in mind, it is important to observe that Pan-Africanism has always been open to widely varied interpretations and articulations. So you notice that Rawborn quoted this part here, yeah, which is taken from this text. All right. Now it says chronicling a variety of ideas, but before and after it says it basically states there's sometimes conflicting ideas in this thing. Yeah. All right. So I don't know why we're going as well trying to give one definitive definition. It's not an honest argument. Right. I'm just gonna do one more thing on this point, then we're gonna get on to Martin Delany. I hope ones are following the thing. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I hope ones are appreciating the discourse thus far. We're going to touch on the book that was quoted in that last text right now, Pan-Africanism and History, where it says some of what was quoted. Definition. In fact, there has never been one universally accepted definition of exactly what constitutes Pan-Africanism. Some writers on the subject are even reluctant to provide a definition or suggest that one cannot be found. Acknowledging that the vagueness of the term reflects on the fact that Pan-Africanism has taken different forms at different historical moments and geographical locations. Nevertheless, most writers will agree that the phenomenon has emerged in the modern period and is concerned with the social, economic, cultural, and political emancipation of African peoples, including those of the African diaspora. So it's not just wait for it to take place on the continent first. No, this is Pan-Africanism has never been what takes place on the continent alone. It's always been the African diaspora. What underlies the manifold visions and approaches of Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists is a belief in the unity, common history, and common purposes of the peoples of Africa and the African diaspora, and the notion that their destinies are interconnected. In addition, many would highlight the importance of the liberation and advancement of the African continent itself, not just for its inhabitants, but also as the whole land of the entire African diaspora. Such perspectives, listen carefully to this now, such perspectives might be traced back to ancient times. So it's legitimate to connect Pan-Africanism and its sensibilities to ancient times. It's a legitimate thought. But Pan-Africanist thought and action is principally connected with and provoked by the modern dispersal of Africans resulting from the trafficking of captives across the Atlantic to the Americas, as well as elsewhere from the end of the 15th century to the close of the 19th century. This slave trade, the largest forced migration in history and the creation of the African diaspora, was accompanied by the emergence of global capitalism, European colonial rule, and anti-African racism. Yeah, now, notice that in the analysis that we're getting from our brothers, we are not getting analysis of capitalism, European colonial rule. We may be getting some analysis on anti-African racism, but even then. All right? Me hope you know I follow the thing, you know. Yeah, I hope you are following where we're going with this. I'm gonna make the point about Martin Delany, and then we are going to move on. Yeah. So you heard Brother Rob Bourne say that Martin Delany was beat up in the streets of what became known as Nigeria, bearing in mind that Nigeria did not exist at the time when Martin Delany traveled to that area of the continent. All right. And he was run out of the country. Let me be honest, yeah. Me don't know too much about the incident that Rob Bourne is alluding to. Okay. In terms of Martin Delany being beat up, yeah, in the streets. I'm not particularly well informed on that incident. However, if I go to New York, yeah, and some brothers rob me and take away my mobile phone that didn't exist when Marcus Garvey was alive, yeah, take away, assuming I have a smartwatch, take away my smartwatch and all of my money, does that mean that there are not Pan-African organizations and people with a Pan-African sensibility in New York because some Africans in New York beat me up on the streets? This level of this argumentation, it just shouldn't be this, is it? It just really shouldn't be this. However, what I can say, yeah, regardless of whether Baba Martin Delany was beat up in the streets or not, in his report, the report that he wrote, the official report of the Niger Valley Exploration Party, written by Baba Martin Delany, he makes this statement about how he was received in what is today referred to as Nigeria. Oh, by the way, I do reference the fact that Baba Martin Delany signed a treaty, yes, with some Yoruba chiefs. Yeah. I'll just read a segment of it. This treaty is between His Majesty, and it names the various different chiefs of the Yoruba. It names Martin Delany and Robert Campbell. Robert Campbell, by the way, is from the Caribbean. Okay. That the king and chiefs on their part agreed to grant and assign unto the said commissioners on behalf of the African race in America the right and privilege of settling in common with the Eba people on any part of the territory belonging to Abeokuta, which is the birthplace of Fela Anikulapo Kuti, not otherwise occupied. And it goes on, okay? And then he's under the subheading, royal deference to black men. He says the liberty which is here, sorry, the liberality which is here accorded to the people of Abeokuta may also accord to most other places. What he's saying is the welcome that we received, yes, in Abeokuta, we received almost everywhere else that we went. The king of Ilori sat in his court exposed to our view because he said we were, quote, his people, unquote, a privilege which he never allowed, quote, a strange white man, unquote, who was never permitted to look upon his royal blackface publicly. In other words, the king in Ilori give Martin Delany and Robert Campbell an audience in him court when him not getting a white man the same privilege. He also sent with us an escort of a horseman and 5 footmen with sword and spear, and guard of honor, sending us cowries to pay the expenses. The king pay for them expenses. The king of Oyo, which is another part of the same region now, paid us distinguished honors through his great Arie Kufu, calling me a relative and sending the chief to inquire after our health. On my leaving Oyo, finally, he sent with me a very large escort, at the head of whom was his commander-in-chief, Kufu, as a guard of honor. The 3 native gentlemen, high in rank as my special carriers. These gentlemen complained to the missioners, Mr. and Mrs. Hindera at Ibadan, that I was quite mistaken as to their true social position at home. To this I pled guilty, as they were quite right. Yeah. So I'm not denying that Martin Delany had some adverse experiences in Africa. Yes. But what is a fact is that when he wrote his official report, this is what him say. Him never tell we say him was run out of the country as a result of whatever violence was inflicted upon him. Him never tell that. Yeah, he said that the people them greeted him extremely well. Okay? That's what him say. All right. That should take care of that. So we're going to stop sharing that and get back to this conversation a little piece. We're nearly there, Kings and Queens. We're nearly there. We're nearly there. It's necessary for us to provide the political education that is not taking place and correct the fallacies and distortions, mischievous and otherwise, that are being promoted in relation to Pan-Africanism.
Yeah. When I was talking to the other brother, the other Jabari, right?
Hell no.
The other Jabari, right?
That's me, yeah. The other Jabari, because you know my name. I don't think Brother Rabborn calls me by my name for the entirety of this conversation. Yeah, I don't think he refers to me by my name for the entirety of this conversation. I'm prepared to stand corrected on that, but I don't think he does. Just pointing out.
Block. So let's keep going. Hold on. And this is it right here, because we're limited for time. I'm waiting for this to go up. I want to show you when I talked about Paul Cuffey, what was he doing when he went to Africa? We want to look at the primaries here. I'm not just going to talk to you like these dudes do. Why you got to show sources? Y'all just like shit because it sounds good. Yo, come on, man. Come on, man. Load up. You're taking too goddamn long. Where is it at? We got sources for days. Over here. Hold on. We're going to get to you. All right. This right here is a brief account of the settlement and the present situation of the colony of Sierra Leone in Africa. This is Paul Cuffey. Remember what I told you? He decided to develop trade between blacks in England, Sierra Leone, and the United States.
He also began to consider the possibility of relocating skilled African Americans to the society and founded the Friendly Society. But when he got there, we're going to blow this up. This is what he said. This is what he said. The Mandingo tribes profess Mohammedanism. He said he became acquainted with them. But something else happens. They have declined the practice of selling their own tribe, but notwithstanding this, they continue to sell those of other tribes and thought it hard that the trafficking slaves should be abolished as they were made poor in consequence thereof. What is he talking about? He's talking about the end of the slave trade that the white man, the British man said, yo, this is a wrap. So while he's over there, he's trying to stop them from selling our people. This is the thing we're talking about. This is Pan-Africanism. This is where it came to. You can't show that coming from Africa to the Americas. You don't see it. This is what this black man tried to do. And what did they do? They wanted to run him out of there. And that's the original reason why Sierra Leone, one of the reasons why Sierra Leone originally that free colony fell, because these people were interfering with the slave trade. So when we're talking about Pan-Africanism, it has a definition. We're not gonna play, well, the tribes in Ghana came together with war. Dahomey came together with war, warring on other tribes to create empire. This Pan-Africanism now we created here is the unification of all people without going to war with each other. You need to get your information correct. And lastly, for Ankh, the Free African Society, the New York African Society, and all of those other societies was successful in their form of Pan-Africanism because they decided to deal with what we are dealing here and did not want to go back to Africa, which all of them, the majority of us denied to go back there because of the reports that was coming back from Liberia, where you have black people in Liberia writing their slave master, telling me, master, I'll work for you, bring me home. And then if you talk about Marcus Garvey, who pulled one of the greatest scams ever, when he was supposed to send our brother over there, the father of what? Of atheism here in America. You should know his name. I can tell it to you. They went over there and they wrote back and said, Liberia is horrible. If the streets are dirty, there's no agriculture, but it was intercepted. And when that letter was intercepted, the Europeans used that to try to derail his movement. And Garvey didn't want to tell the black people in America that this is what the fuck was going on over there. He didn't want to tell us the truth. He wanted to stick to his crazy, I'm the king of Africa, and never been to Africa. So what Ankh is saying is correct in the essence as far as that form of Pan-Africanism. When you're looking at that, it is always us who are the ones who initiate this thing, who go back and forth. We the ones who come from America, going over there, trying to negotiate with Africans to stop selling niggas. Don't come on here talking about Black American history and you don't know it. I'm done, man.
All right, hold on one second, guys. Hold on. Everybody deal.
All right, so you notice here, he keeps trying to make this about other people talking about Black American history, yeah? Okay. Nobody's denying that Africans in the United States of America, yeah, were significant in the development of Pan-Africanism and Pan-African movements. Raborn and Ankh are denying the significance of Pan-African movements on the African continent and almost everywhere else apart from the United States of America. What Raborn just did, which was skillful, yeah, was create a dichotomy between Pan-Africanism in the United States of America and Pan-Africanism outside of the United States of America. And so Pan-Africanism in the United States of America worked. Pan-Africanism outside the United States of America didn't work, particularly on the continent didn't work. And the forms of Pan-Africanism that worked in America were those that were not connected to Africa. Yeah? He just said it worked because they chose to stay here. Which is strange because he had up on the screen at that moment the petition that was developed by Prince Hall, which was about returning to Africa, which is about getting reparations, yeah, to return to Mama Africa. Quite literally, yeah. It says this. He had the words on the screen a minute ago. I'll read a section of it. It says, we or our ancestors have been taken from our dear connections and brought from Africa. Pause. We or our ancestors have been taken from our dear connections and brought from Africa. Hold on. By the way, this is what? The year 1787. Okay? Now, bear in mind, I already said that the Sons of Africa in the UK was developed in the year 1780. Okay. All right. So 1787, this petition is written. We or our ancestors have been taken from our dear connections and brought from Africa. In the book, The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James, he outlines the fact that the overwhelming majority of the people that fought in the Haiti Revolution were born on the continent of Africa. Africans are still being trafficked to the United States of America and the Americas in general during this point, and would be for nearly 100 years after this point, up until the 1860s, and some say even further than that. So what is a Black American in the 1780s? What is that? What's a Jamaican in the 1780s? Haiti don't even exist yet as a nation. What's a St. Lucian, a Barbadian, a Trinidadian? When significant numbers of all of the peoples in these various different places were born on the continent of Africa. There is none of these identities exist to any significant extent at this point. So when we say Black Americans, no, these are Africans. Yeah? As the thing say, we or our ancestors, or our ancestors have been taken from our dear connections and brought from Africa. So some of the people that wrote and signed this petition were born on the continent and then enslaved. Where did we get the idea from that somehow there's something special in the American water that produced this thing among Africans when they got there? Yeah, there's something particular about America, what comes with the United States of America, that Africans there were able to do things that nobody else was able to do. Again, we are not denying, and we are in fact celebrating the indelible contribution that Africans for generations in what becomes known as the United States of America has made to the liberation of African people. That's not the point. That is undeniable. But why are we denying the contribution of Africans on the continent in particular and the rest of the African world in general? All right. So that's that. I'm gonna look at what he said in terms of Paul Coffey. Now, bear in mind, regardless of what Paul Coffey faced, yeah, we've accepted that they were collaborators in the African continent. Paul Coffey spent the rest of his life trying to transport Africans from the United States of America to the African continent. So, at least what he faced and whatever contradictions he witnessed, and Paul Coffey had his own contradictions, but whatever contradictions he witnessed in Sierra Leone did not deter him from continuing to forward the program. Yeah, the idea that it's better now to deal with what is being faced in America because of what is taking place on the African continent. This is the early 1800s. What's taking place in the United States of America is slavery. And notice Brother Rabourne said he had to stop them from selling us. Who's the us? And who is the them in that scenario? At what point do the Africans captured on the continent become us? When they're captured? When they're on the boat? When they arrive on the shores in the Americas? When does the we and them become us I need some clarification on that point. At the same time, we know that there were collaborators on the African continent, but there were also people defending and protecting themselves and others on the African continent. Why is this not a part of the conversation? Yeah, to extemporize upon this, we're going to go to the book Fighting the Slave Trade, the West African Strategies by Sylvian A. Diouf. All right. And just note a couple of examples. The whole book is about, and it's probably the only book of its kind that details how Africans on the continent resisted invasion and slavery. Okay, which should tell you what really are going on, Yasso. It says in this section, Ismail Rashid relates and analyzes a series of domestic slave revolts that took place in the Upper Guinea coast and illustrates how domestic slavery and the Atlantic slave trade were closely linked. Yeah. So what happened was that during the development of the enslavement process, it began to have an impact upon the indigenous systems of servitude that began to contribute to the so-called transatlantic trafficking in enslaved Africans. All right. And so Africans on the continent began to rise up against this. Yeah. The author asserts that anti-slavery and anti-slave trade discourses manifested themselves concretely in the rebellions and the creation of maroon villages on the continent of Africa, kings and queens, maroon villages, and the appropriations and creative interpretations of hegemonic ideas by the enslaved. Yeah. This analysis goes against the widely held notion that Africans did not challenge the institution of slavery. Okay. So, well, yeah, there were collaborators, people that accommodated the Europeans for various different motivations and reasons. Yeah. And yes, some of it was coercion, some of it was force. Yeah. Maybe we'll come back to that in a second. Right. So we're going to deal with some defensive ways in which Africans organize themselves. Yeah. So let's check this out. The prominent role played by, let me big this up a little more in case people want to read, know so when I read is correct. All right. What's the thing? Okay. The prominent role played by Dahomey Benin in the supply of captives for enslavement in the Americas is illustrated by the abundant literature on this old West African kingdom. Ouidah, its port of trade, is a familiar name to students and scholars of the Atlantic slave trade. The extant literature, however, does not address several issues of Dahomey's involvement in the trade. The impact of the obnoxious traffic on the old kingdom and indeed on other contemporary sub-Saharan African polities is generally overlooked. Little attention, if any, is paid to the ways local populations resisted the slave trade and enslavement. This idea that the whole continent was full of people that were running into the slave trade and trying to profit from it doesn't even make any logical sense. But we repeat these colonial narratives, these European Western imperialist narratives, for the sake of disregarding those who envisage an African people and an Africa of an African imagination, so that tacitly, consciously or unconsciously, we could align with this or that formation of Western imperialism and white supremacy. Little attention, if any, is paid to the ways local populations resisted the slave trade and enslavement, thereby giving the impression that any form of resistance began on board the slave ships or in the Americas. Not much is known about the various forms of internal resistance to the traffic, thereby creating the assumption among many that captives surrendered like sacrificial lambs to their oppressors. By examining the primary form of resistance and protection provided by the nature of the environment, this chapter is an attempt to challenge such a view. The environment under consideration is made of a series of Lacostean villages in the southern region of the present-day Republic of Benin. Ganvier is the most important and best known of these villages because of its exploitation as, quote, one of the gems of the Republic of Benin's tourist and cultural heritage. Ganvier is also referred to as the Venice of Africa, extolled by Eustache Prudential, the country's popular poet, in one of his famous poems. But even the least attentive tourist visiting the site can easily understand from the guide's explanation that those living in the so-called Venice of Africa and other adjacent Lacostean villages were not attracted there in the early 18th century by the beauty of the landscape. The search for security in a period of violence and fear created by slave raiders and traders forced fleeing populations to seek a decent life in an environment that was then and still largely remains unattractive. Yeah, so people migrated to this place to protect themselves and each other from the enslavement process. All right, but who migrated and how and why? Yeah, let's look at this. The country of the men on water. During the era of the transatlantic slave trade, Lake Nokue and the swampland surrounding it provided an ideal refuge for various migrants who came to constitute an homogeneous ethnic group, that of the Tofino. Listen carefully. Provided an ideal refuge for what? Various migrants who came, who did what? Came to constitute a homogeneous ethnic group. These people were not a homogeneous ethnic group to begin with. They came from various different groups and then came to constitute a homogeneous ethnic group. They built a community and an identity from the amalgamation of various different ethnic groups. This is the continent of Africa. On not hear me, I say. I wonder if on hear me, I say, and overstand when me, I say. That of the Tofino. This major historical factor in the establishment and relocation of villages in the area, though acknowledged, is yet to be the focus of investigation. In contrast, the physical environment in which various and successive generations of migrants settled, their social organization, and their economic activities have been the subject of significant research. The starting point and focus of these studies are generally the ecological dimensions of human settlements, because basically they built a community on water and swamplands and rivers. Yeah. Geographers, botanists, geologists, and archaeologists, in an ethnographic perspective, have made outstanding contributions to our knowledge of what I call Tofinuland. All right, so they focus on the archaeology and so on and so forth, but not very many of them focus on the people and the historical circumstances that brought about the migrations in the first place. The piece continues. The Tofino traditionally trace their origin of their migrations to Tado, Cradle, and the departure of the Aja ethnic groups to various destinations. According to the prevalent tradition, the earliest migrations from Tado, led by Agasu, resulted in the establishment of the related kingdoms of Sahe, Savi, Wida, Alada, Abome, and Hogbonu, Ajase, Porto Novo. Though it is imprudent to suggest a reliable chronology, it is generally assumed that the migration of the Tofinu, who started establishing themselves as refugees in the area of Lake Nokue by the end of the 17th century, occurred later, probably a century or so after the Agasu-led movement. Despite the present state of our knowledge of the various aspects of these migrations, two factors appear clearly from the general picture. First, the core of the refugees who moved to the lake area by successive stages was made by the Aja Tado ethnic group. Tofingbe, the Tofinu language, is closely related to Ajafon family And second, sorry, the search for security took place within the context of violence and fear associated with the ongoing slave trade in Ouida, Alada, and Abome. This violence escalated with the conquest of Dahomey by the Alada by Dahomey of Alada in 1722 and Ouida in 1727, and forced more groups, including non-Aja, to move to the Lacostean era in order to escape slave raiders and enslavement. So this is an example of Africans coming together across various different ethnic groups to protect themselves from enslavement and the encroachment of colonizers. And their lackeys among the indigenous peoples them. All right. So that's one example. I'm going to give you another one. And I'm being detailed, but as I said, go. And we're nearly 3 hours in. Let's see. Okay, we're gonna. I'm in the wrong book. Hold on there. All right, so we're gonna try one. We're gonna get into some of the more offensive strategies that were employed. And then we're gonna move one out. There's more to get into, you know, and I might not have time to do it all today. But I don't know if I want to do a part 3. So maybe I'll just record the part 3, and broadcast it. I'm not sure because there's so much more to get into. Let me see. Defensive strategies, protective strategies, offensive strategies. Right. Let's get down here. Bear with me, kings and queens. We're nearly there. All right. So, in the essay that is entitled, one second. Chapter 8, Igbo land slavery and drums of war and heroism. Okay. It says, according to oral tradition, Enwelana, the priestly king of the Unri Eze, the king of the Unri, was so deeply touched by the loss of human lives and the socio-economic dislocations caused by the Abam. So the Abam were a militarized group of people that were collaborating, basically, known to be doing raids on other villages, and this the Eze Unri, his particular village had not been raided yet, all right, but he was so deeply in touch by the loss of human lives and the socio-economic dislocations caused by the Abam that he appealed to Okolie Ijoma of the Indekelionu, the leading Aro slave dealer who engaged the Abam services to end the slave trade. But as Okolie Ijoma failed to heed the warning, the Eze Nri is said to have pronounced a ritual curse on him and the Abam, declaring them unwanted persons in his domain. Why we not hear about the people then were declared the people then were engaged in the enslavement process as unwanted persons in any of the domains? Why we not hear about that? Since the curse may not have stopped the raids, but it put the Aro and the Abam in greater physical jeopardy, since anyone in Unri was free to attack and even kill them without being accused of committing murder and forced to carry out a ritual cleansing ceremony in the shrine of the earth goddess, which is Allah or Anna in Igbo. In addition, if a variant of the tradition is correct, the curse may have had some psychological effect, since Okolie Ijoma was said to have been so troubled by the calamities that might befall him that he had to apologize to the Eze Unri for his nefarious activities. Like the Unri, the people of Enugu Uku town were constantly exposed to the Abam raids. Their response was to adopt the strategy of the fox and wage a cold war against the Abam by avoiding direct military confrontations with them. The strategy involved dropping poison food, water, and wine for the Abam in strategic routes and other places they often used to invade the town. Yeah. This strategy terrified the Abam, who mysteriously died in large numbers before an invasion, and in consequence, they excluded the town from further military operations. Some communities, however, reasoned that due to their limited manpower and material resources, they could not effectively defend themselves against the Abam. Such communities allied with their neighbors for their mutual defense. Typical examples are the Umuchu, consisting of the Ihite, Ogugu, and the Okpuna Akala or Achala, autonomous communities that are said to have collectively hired the services of a native doctor, not only to cement their unity, but to prevent Abam incursions with medicine, called Ichu, prevention, driving away. It was from the medicine that the community derived its present common name, Umuchu, children of Ichu. The native doctor, the traditional fervor claims, buried symbols of Ichu in strategic places in central Nkwa Market and Odere Lake, which are currently called Nkwa Ichu and Odere Ichu, respectively. Similarly, the Isuochi and the Neato of Okigwe formed confederations that helped them in warding off Abam invasions. So we're seeing on the African continent people coming together and organizing for the sake of throwing off the enslavement. Yes, and the so-called slave trade. All right. Okay, couple other examples. In around 1770, this is another essay now, in the same book. Yeah. Let me scroll up to get the name of the essay. All right. A Devotion to the Idea of Liberty at Any Price, yeah, by Ismail Rashid. Rebellion and anti-slavery in the Upper Guinea Coast in the 18th century and the 18th and 19th centuries. Okay. So we're just showing, yeah, Raborn demonstrated that that there are collaborators on the African continent. Okay. So who and where and why and how were the people on the African continent fighting back? Around 1750, about 100 captives led by a Fuller named Old Mano rebelled on board a Danish slave ship, the Clare B. Williams, aided by a local headman. They fled and established a free settlement in the mountains of Sierra Leone. These Africans were not members of one ethnic group. All right, I want to know that. The community became the target for slave raiders, and the residents of the escapees were said to be so jealous of the strangers that they permit them not to approach and even watch the avenues of their town. Yet when the French attacked the newly established settlement for free slaves in 1794, they provided refuge for some of the settlers. When I first read that, I was asking, I've even wrote it. I've got a note in my book saying why. I want to know why they did that. I want to know the motivations of these colonizers. Yeah, but I don't know that yet. So that's another story for another time. In the same chapter continues, resistance was not only directed at the slave trade, but also at internal enslavement. From mid to late 18th century, many revolts broke out on the Upper Guinea coast as the enslaved fought against African and European slave traders and holders. In 1756, the enslaved population of Futa Jalon rose against the slave-owning class, declared themselves free, and migrated northwest towards Futa Bundu. They built a well-fortified settlement called Kondia, which was repeatedly attacked by the Fuller and their allies. And so you see that the Fuller were involved in rebelling against enslavement, but some of them were also, collaborating. That's the complexity of the thing. All right. James Watt, a British emissary to the Al-Mami city, to the Al-Mami, sorry, cities, cites two other rebellions against the Futajalo elite during his visit to Timbo in 1794. He noted the extensive destruction caused by the revolt, its brutal repression, and the execution of 30 men among the leaders. Other slaveholding polities in the region also experienced rebellions. In many instances, the formerly enslaved peoples established liberated communities which became magnets for other fugitive and rebellious. Formerly enslaved peoples established liberated communities which became magnets for other fugitive rebellious slaves. The free communities should be seen as a counter to the Rund, like the Maroons in the Caribbean and the Americas. The enslaved Africans consciously created these communities to assert their freedom, separate themselves from their slaveholders, and gain autonomy over their lives. All right, I do believe I've made the point. The entire book, yeah, details various different, examples of Africans on the continent resisting the enslavement process and collaborating across so-called ethnic groups in order to do so. Okay. Kings and queens, I'm in a bit of a dilemma. I have more to go. Yeah, I have more to go. I'm debating whether I need to do a part 3 or not, just to finish off this thing, because I've been on for 3 hours now and I don't want to make the conversation too long. My inclination is to stop here. Yeah, text some of the comments in the chat and reconvene, or maybe not. Maybe just leave it here. Maybe I've dumped the thing. Oh, let me say this. I want to say this, and I might, if I do a part 3, I might even touch on this a little more. In fact, maybe not. I might just repeat what I'm about to say here. Raborn say the prophet Marcus Mosiah Garvey pulled one of the biggest scams ever. Yeah. We need. Now, this is the same brother that was demanding sources from me for the whole conversation. Didn't provide a solitary source for his pronouncements on Marcus Mosiah Garvey and the program of the UNIA ACO. So me want sources. Yeah, as them saying in the conversation, this is the place where you're supposed to source up or shut up. Me want to see the sources of the scam. Yes, of the scamming that the prophet Marcus Mosiah Garvey and the millions of members of the UNIA ACO were engaged in. That me want to know. But one thing that I've noticed is that when brothers and sisters get anti-African, anti-African centered and anti-Pan-African, they always seem to feel the need to take aim at the most honorable prophet, visionary, supreme visionary, and master organizer of African liberation, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I've noticed this trend that in order to negate and destroy the principles, values, and activities of the Pan-African movement, you have to cast aspersions on the character, the program, and the integrity of the most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I have nothing really to respond to here because no information was provided. But I await the day when the information is provided of the scam that Marcus Mosiah Garvey is supposed to have engaged in relation to the program of the UNIA ACO. I await that information. Yeah, kings and queens, I'm inclined to pause here. All right. And I don't know if there's a desire for a part 3. I don't know if it's gonna be feel like flogging dead horse, but there is some more information to get into in relation to some of the statements that were made up until I was thrown out of the conversation most unceremoniously. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave that there. So I'm inclined to, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know if I should do a part 3 in it. Let's take in some of this conversation. I'm gonna scroll up as much as I can. All right, you know what? Let's just say I'm gonna spend the next 10 minutes, yeah, taking questions. I can't respond to everything in the chat, so or questions or comments. All right. So if you want me to highlight or address anything from here on out, feel free to say now. And at me, and I'll address it. But just to say, for those who were not here at the beginning, I've been replaying a conversation that took place on the Brother Garfield podcast channel, and it pertained to Pan-Africanism. Javier says, part 3 unnecessary. They're just riding trends and grifting practically. I hear that still. I hear that. I'm not gonna lie though. I am moved to address some of what was said later on in the conversation. So I'm deciding. But I take your point. Part 3 is not necessary. I take your point. I take your point. By the way, in the Niger Valley Exploration Party, yeah, the official report of the Niger Valley Exploration Party, Brother Martin Delany does deal with the issue of slavery among the Yoruba, and he begins by saying that it's nonsensical to equate what takes place among the Yoruba with anything commensurate with what is taking place within the so-called transatlantic enslavement system. But he does identify that there are some what he refers to as depraved natives, yeah, who engage in raiding and kidnapping other Africans. All right, so let's just pointing that out. Yeah, but this is the same document that I read from earlier where he talked about, you know, how cordially he was treated in what is today known as Nigeria. Greetings, Brother Kwame. Greetings. King Kel, are you endorsing a part 3 here? He said part 3 is great political scientific knowledge. Are you endorsing a part 3 here? There's not much left. I just don't want to make the thing too long. You know what I'm saying? Especially for playback purposes. You know what? I just remembered something. Yeah, I just remembered something. There is a point that has to be addressed. Yeah, there is a point that has to be addressed. And so I'm definitely going to do a part 3. There is a point that has to be addressed. And later on in the conversation, Brother Ra Bourne asks me, while I was fabricating the idea that Brother Seku was telling them about African politics, he demands that I give him an explanation as to how the politics that are taking place on the African continent relate to the conditions of Africans in the United States of America, specifically as it relates to gentrification and a couple other social indicators, which I won't mention now. But that is important, and I really want to deal with that. Yeah, I really want to deal with it. So I'm definitely gonna do a part 3. Yeah. Okay. King Kel said he's endorsing a part 3. All right. We give thanks. So yeah, I'm decided in it because that point has to be addressed. Well, I've been on for over 3 hours now, and we don't want to long out the thing too much. All right. Anything else anyone's got to say to me? Well, I want to give thanks to Brother Jabari for tuning in. Yeah, he wasn't able to come live, but I do give thanks for him listening in, and I hope you know, he takes some strength from the conversation. Yeah, Brother Jabari, if we ever are blessed to have a conversation, yeah, there are some things, yeah, or should I say, there are some differences of emphasis that I have with you as an African spiritualist. And so we will engage in some friendly dialogue in relation to those things, yeah, no doubt. But I absolutely, yeah, support you in the quest to make the spirituality of our ancient Pt2 ancestors real in the lives of African people in today's world, and to employ the philosophy and practice of Pt2 spirituality, of Medjuneta, of Neteru, towards Pan-African principles and African liberations. And when it comes to what I consider to be the unprincipled attack against your character, I stand with you 100%. And I say that unashamedly, my brother. So I appreciate you for tuning in and for listening in. And from based upon what you said, it's not the first time that you've taken in something that I've put out. So I'm humbled by that. And I look forward to us being able to dialogue, yeah, further in the future. Bigging up Mansa Fode. I feel better to call Chief Fode Mansa, you know. It's the indigenous title. Mansa Fode. But I know most people know him as Chief Fode, so I refer to him as Chief Fode. But bigging up Mansa Fode, yeah. You know what I'm saying? From the UNIA ACO and the Black Star Action Network into outer national organizations of which I am a member. We give thanks because we are the works around here. And when we get into more different things, yeah, it's going to be more than just about challenging nonsense that people chat online. We're going to be more profiling the work that is taking place in the Pan-African world and all of these things. What's it? Let me see what is being said here. King Kel says he's a notes on the part 3. I say big up all Africans in a true spirit of Rasta. We'll give thanks. Everything. Okay. I'm not sure what Brother Kwame is just throwing into here. Especially the part about Martin Delany and his code on the continent compared to how he was treated well and how he stayed on code against unsynchronized mindset. I love that. Yeah. So the fact that there were some unsynchronized Africans in Nigeria, or what became known as Nigeria, because it wasn't called Nigeria then, didn't deter Baba Martin Delany from the greater principles and ideals and vision. Yeah, that's the lesson that we learned from Martin Delany. Never deterred him from that. Yeah, some unsynchronized Africans, even if they were violent against him still forward with the mission. So if Brother Rawborn and Brother Ankh and Brother Garfield are deterred from the mission for whatever reason, they're entitled to their determent. But there are many who are not deterred from the mission because chance has never yet satisfied the hope of a suffering people. Action, self-reliance, the vision of self, and the future have been the only means by which the oppressed have seen the light of their own freedom. Want to thank Brother Seku for joining me, yeah, for this conversation once again. It's the second time he's joined me on the panel. And Brother Seku also always has the beautiful insights. And I want to second his proposal and advice to Brother Sarnetter. Brother Sarnetter, my brother, if you are blessed, if I am blessed to have you watching this particular stream right about now, you know you have a very powerful platform and a very powerful voice. And I do believe that Brother Seku's suggestion to you would be a great asset to the work that you are doing in terms of the format in which we host and develop these conversations. I know a symposium is not necessarily as sexy and as controversial as a debate and so on and so forth, but I believe that it would definitely heighten the value of the platform, House of Consciousness, Black News 102, and Sarnetter Studios. And so I want to second Brother Seku's suggestion, and I would support any activity that takes place in that direction. So I'm just putting that out there. Question, Shaka. King Kel says, I it would be great if you could teach the youth on your podcast how to implement the African history in a politically scientific way during these times. Yeah, so that's the whole point. Well, first of all, I have a series that I'm doing called the Pan-African Question, where I'm answering various different questions on Pan-Africanism. The last one that I did, I think you watched, was identifying and outlining the principles of universal African nationalism, which is the philosophy and practice, or the philosophical idealism. Yes, sorry, the working idealism, yes, of the UNIA ACL as led by the guidance of the Prophet Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And so we're going to be clarifying a lot of different political science and questions to do Pan-African theory and practice through that series, yeah. And then we are developing works with Basani, the Black Star Action Network International, as well as members of the Garvey Honor Society, graduates of the course of African philosophy that was initiated by Marcus Mosiah Garvey in the late 1930s, to do some work on political education and science and them kind of things there. So do stay tuned for them works, my brother. Yeah, I am not an island in these works, as you know. So we work through organization and with organization in this regard. I actually agree with Ark. We don't need or want everyone to join Pan-Africanism. Next thing, we end up fighting every day pointlessly. Yeah, I mean, but his statement was based upon that just a lack of knowledge about Pan-African movements and ideologies. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You know, yeah. So, but I hear what you're saying. It usually starts with a particular group of people that are impassioned by the principles and values, and they implement it. And through that implementation, others will come on board. Yeah, at various different stages of the implementation. So we can't be deterred by detractors. We just got to keep doing the work. Brother Kwame says Pan-Africanism is essential in order to fight for our freedom. I agree, my brother. All right, I agree. So certainly. In part 3, though, we're going to get into some practical issues in terms of now. Yeah, and the geopolitical reality of now. And the fact that a lot of the analysis of our brothers, unfortunately, takes into consideration what they consider to be the conditions of African people, particularly on the continent, but does not take into consideration the geopolitical realities of the world in which we live and the geopolitical hegemony of Western Europe as it currently affects the lives of African peoples everywhere in the world. That is the greatest flaw in their analysis. All right, kings and queens, I am going to leave it there for today. I'm going to leave you as I entered the conversation, giving you some beautiful African vibrations from the nation of Suriname. Big up, King Gold. You're late in the thing. You know what I'm saying? You're late in the thing. All right, so I'm definitely doing a part 3. I've put it out there, but brothers and sisters have endorsed it as well. Big up to all the silent listeners, the silent viewers. Yeah, because I know say no found a comment, I don't know come on the platform, but I listen. Big up to all the haters listening as well. Big up to the people that I'm taking notes because they want to come back at me. I know say I listen too. So we big up to yourself. Same way. And I also want to big up Brother Garfield, Brother Rawborn, and Brother Ankh, because in as much of what you have had to say, I consider to be incorrect, and in some instances, even ignorant, it has provided, the wherewithal to continue these conversations. So if you're just tuning in, yeah, check out the beginning of this conversation. In fact, check out part 1 and part 2, yeah, of this conversation, and stay tuned for the pending part 3. I could go on all night, Kings and Queens, but yeah, let's keep it to this for today, and we'll come back to the vibration at hand on another day. All right. So with that, Tendai Mwadi, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Mudzimu Mukuru. Give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi. Abibi Fahodie, African liberation and African power for all African people. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Mina bakabusi nengre mefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre mefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minebele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre mefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minebele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre mefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Ayo minefele sama. Minefele sama. Mama minefele sama. Minefele sama. Isa minefele sama. Minefele sama. Mama minefele sama. Minefele sama. Dada minefele sama. 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 Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Ayo minefele sama. Minefele sama. Mama minefele sama. Minefele sama. Isa minefele sama. Minefele sama. Mama minefele sama. Minefele sama. Minefele sama. Minefele sama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Ayo. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre minefele sama. Ayo minefele sama. Minefele sama. Mama minefele sama. Minefele sama. Isa minefele sama. Minefele sama. Mama minefele sama. Minefele sama. Mama